Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. Let me know in the chat whether you can hear me or give me a thumbs up. Just looking through all of the places where people are visiting from: Serbia, Switzerland, Portugal, Thailand, South Africa. Lots of thumbs up. Great. Wow, you guys are all over the place. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are based. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. Right, we're going to start off with, so we've got lots to cover today. It's a 3-hour webinar. We've got some incredible speakers that are going to be on, that are going to share their story. I've got a ton of stuff that I'm going to give to you as well. Do you remember when you were a kid, you used to have those, some of the older people maybe like myself, we'd have those cassettes that you put into the tape player, and you had a book that you read along with the cassette, and it went ding and you turned the page. Let me know whether anyone remembers those. So we're going to do something similar than that. Okay, Marco does. Thank goodness I'm not the oldest person here. So we're going to do something similar to that. My team is going to post a link into the chat, which is a workbook that you can fill in as you go along. And as you go through the workbook, you can just put in any notes that you got, any insights that you get. There'll be a few questions that you can answer. There'll also be some freebies in there. So if my team could put that link in the chat, that would be great. We're going to keep putting that in for latecomers and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that's all good and that will work out. So you just fill that in as you go along. I'm really excited about today. Today is it's sort of an opportunity to share across a whole bunch of things that I've been working on. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little gift away as well for everyone that's on this. And I'm going to make a suggestion. So what I've done is I've put a LinkedIn post up about today. And if you can go to that LinkedIn post at any point in the next 3 hours, and just drop a comment in it. And the reason that I want you to do this is not for me, but because we've got over 100 people on this call that are all very good looking, very ambitious, driven, experienced people. They're good people to connect with. And so if every one of you can drop a link, drop a comment on that LinkedIn post that my team has just shared, then when you're finished on this webinar, you can go back to that, have a look through the comments, have a look at who is the interesting people and connect and follow with them there. So, because sometimes when you do these events, you hear some really interesting discussion in the chat and then the event's over and you've got no way to follow up with the attendees. So that's the purpose of that. Just put a little comment into that LinkedIn post. That would be great. And instead of just, sometimes people will spam their LinkedIn profile into the chat. Please don't do that, because nobody knows who you are. It's not a good way to build connections. Instead, share one of your key learnings in this LinkedIn post. Anyone that does that will also give them a little LinkedIn gift, a free profile analyzer. So I'm going to start with a question, because this is really the heart of what we're going to talk about today, which is inner circle and getting into the inner circle. So if you think about a circle, let me know in the chat, how many sides do you think a circle has? Let me know. And this is not a dad, well, maybe it is a dad joke, but let me know how many sides you think a circle has. Infinite. There's the mathematician in the room. One side, one side. All right, 2 sides in and out. There you go. Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed through my business career is that there are 2 sides to a circle. There is the inside and the outside. And I've spent a lot of time on the outside trying to get onto the inside, because what I realized very early on was in every industry, you have an inner circle. In every element, in business, in across, like within companies, within industries, within the wider world, you have these inner circles, and that's where all of the cool stuff happens. It's where all of the interesting conversations go on. Now, I always kind of felt a bit of an outsider. So this was me not very long ago. So I was born in New Zealand. If you're trying to figure out the accent, I was born in New Zealand. I grew up in the UK. And I had a very strong Kiwi accent and a pet tiger, as you can see there. So when I moved to England, I was very much an outsider because I came from New Zealand and I had this very strong Kiwi accent that took me a long, long time to shake. In fact, it still comes out when I'm watching rugby. But it kind of made me an outsider. In the UK in the late 70s, there weren't a lot of foreigners there, so I kind of stood out that, and I did feel like a bit of an outsider. And then I was also in Cambridge, which was a very nice part of the UK. All my friends were very middle class and had lovely family homes, and I came from a single parent family that was struggling. And so again, I kind of felt like an outsider. And I think part of what has driven me is that I've always been trying to get onto the inside. I've always been trying to get past that. So I don't necessarily think of being an outsider as being a negative thing, but we'll all have had experiences in our careers where we've felt like a bit of an outsider. So let me know in the chat whether you can relate to that in some way. When I got a little bit older, I kind of had a real epiphany about the whole difference between being an outsider and being an insider. So one of my first kind of grown up jobs was I was working in Holland, and I was working for an internet company at the height of the .com, and it was the biggest ISP, internet service provider in the world, UNet WorldCom. I worked in an operations center there, ended up managing this European operations center. And basically, I was a young, very inexperienced employee. I was about 23 years old, 22 years old, and I kept getting promoted. It basically, because we were right in the heart of the internet world, even though I made some really bad mistakes, I've spoken about those in the past, mistakes that cost the company millions of dollars. It was just, I was in the right place at the right time and kept getting promoted, kept getting paid lots and lots of money. It was fantastic. Then things changed. Then the bubble burst, and I decided to move to Asia. And so I moved to Thailand to become an entrepreneur. And I became very, very acutely aware that in Thailand, I was an outsider, not just because I was a foreigner, but because I was a struggling entrepreneur and I was no longer in the right place where everything was happening. In fact, it felt like it didn't matter how hard I worked, I couldn't get any traction. And at the same time, what was happening was my peers were still employees and they weren't working nearly as hard as I was, but they were still getting promoted. They were getting nice fat salaries. They were buying houses. They were getting expense accounts. And I started to really, really doubt myself and wonder what was going on. And what I realized was that I was just in the wrong place. I wasn't in the inner circle. I was very much as an outsider. And it's not actually about your talent. I'm assuming everybody that is on this is talented and driven and hardworking, but you will have experience of people that are less talented than you, less hardworking than you, that have been promoted, that have got ahead of you in their careers because they were part of that inner circle, because they had those trusted relationships already. And I became really, really fascinated with this concept, mostly because I found it really frustrating. I knew I was working much, much harder than I had been working a few years earlier, and yet I wasn't making any of the money. And so I became fascinated about how do you become an insider? How do you get into those rooms where the big decisions are made? Now, there's a great story I want to share with you, and this was from a few years ago. And this is a gentleman called Joshua Bell, and the Washington Post did this experiment. So you may have heard of this story. So Joshua Bell went and opened up his violin case and started playing in the Washington, D.C. subway. And he played for 45 minutes. And that violin that he's holding is a $3.5 million Stradivarius. So he played for 45 minutes. 1,000 people walked past. Only 7 stopped to watch him, and he made $32.17. And yet, on the right, you can see him playing at a concert hall. And when he played in the concert halls, he was getting paid $150,000 a night. Nothing changed, playing exactly the same. I don't think they call them sets in the orchestra, do they? But playing exactly the same music on exactly the same instrument, but he was in a different environment. Um, and the difference was the difference between $32 and $150,000. And so really what today is about is I want to show you what I've learned over the years. I'm going to bring in some incredible speakers that have applied this as well to get amazing results about how it's not about you needing to learn more things. I think you probably have everything you already know, but there's a framework that you can follow to make sure you get into the right rooms. And when you get into the right rooms, your earning potential goes up exponentially. It's not an incremental difference. It's really night and day. So let me know. Oh, got lots and lots of comments that I've missed already, but let me know in the chat whether you can relate to that. Have you ever had an experience where somebody less talented that you got promoted, or whether you have been in one environment and been very, very successful in another environment and not so successful? Facility says, absolutely, and the difference is the hat. That's what it was. Yep, in fact, you can finish this whole webinar. It's just take your hat off. Good comment. My whole life, Eugene says. Okay, good. So it's not just me. That's good. So look, really the whole question that I want you to be thinking about as we go through this is, what room am I not in that could change everything? And look, it'll be different for you than it is the person next to you. So different industries, different companies, but be thinking about that. And we're going to go through this framework each time. Just think, how does this relate to me? Now, I'm going to show you some examples from entrepreneurs. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. You do need to be entrepreneurial. And I'd love to get your take in the chat, whether you like what you think the difference is. But I think, and look, I'm sure most of you spend time on LinkedIn as well. There's a lot of talk about how AI is changing the workforce. And I'm super, super aware of that. I think we're about to see a massive, massive undertaking and a change in the way traditional careers go. And I generally, I think it's a very positive thing. I think there's a lot of good to come out of it, but it's going to be very, very disruptive. Now, a lot of people are saying you need to be an entrepreneur to deal with this. I don't think that's the case, but I do think everyone needs to become more entrepreneurial. And so Danielle is saying every job requires a degree of entrepreneurial spirit to succeed. I agree. So I think generally the kind of the definition for me is that an entrepreneur creates a business to deliver an outcome. Entrepreneurial is about just looking to deliver an outcome, and you can do that outcome within your company or sitting on the boards of other companies. You don't necessarily need to create a business to do it. And I don't think everyone, I don't think everyone is cut out to do that, but I do think everyone can think in terms of outcomes. Whereas what's happened up until very recently is there's been this emphasis on time rather than outcome. So most careers are based on you spending a certain amount of time rather than the outcome. So look, the way I want you to think about today, and this actually came through last night. So I get these requests quite a lot. So can I mentor someone? Can I coach someone? I'm not a particularly good coach, I don't think. And so generally what I do is I don't do one-on-one coaching or one-on-one mentoring, but I do have quite a lot of people that want to work with me directly. And what I realized very early on was actually they learn far more if we can work on a deal together. And so I have a few people every year, because the other thing I realized was actually most of the time they don't want my knowledge, they want my network. They want to get access to all of the people that I know. And so What I'm sharing with you today is basically the framework that I take through each of my clients. And so I have these one-on-one clients, they pay 80,000. It's a one-time payment because if it doesn't work after a year, why would we do it again? And if it does work, then we'll work together anyway. But everything I'm going to share with you right now is what I take my clients through. And it's a framework that I think anyone can apply to get the results and get into that inner circle. Let me just have a quick look. Yep, can relate. Very true, Callum. I agree. Every job requires entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneur, enterprising, resourceful, ingenious. Yeah, absolutely. Is this session being recorded? Yeah, it should be being recorded. And I think we'll send a recording to everyone afterwards as well. Okay, so quick background on me, if you're not familiar. So obviously me and my pet tiger came from New Zealand to the UK, and then I've actually been in Asia for the last 20 years, written a few best-selling books, some of which you are going to get a chance to get free copies of if you're filling in the form along this. We've now taken nearly 100 company or over 100 companies public. I've been lucky enough to win a few awards, European CEO of the Year, Best CEO, and I run a bunch of companies. So I'm a partner at Unity Group, which is a small business mergers and acquisitions company. I've got a media business, capital raising and direct program, and you're going to hear a little bit about those. And that's kind of why I think most people want to get to me. It's not because of me, it's because of the network around me. But that's the value in of itself. And I think if one of the things we're going to move into straight away is connections and how you can build that. So when I was young, I again, not that long ago. But when I was still in the UK, we used to go in my 20s, mid-20s, and in Holland, I would go clubbing. And clubbing in the UK basically meant standing around in the cold, in the rain, waiting to be let in. And I remember doing that, and being the UK, you'd have people fighting and vomiting and throwing kebabs at each other and all that kind of good stuff. And I remember watching in envy, like these cars would drive up, people would get out of the cars and just walk straight in, like VIP into the club. I would be stood out there freezing cold for another hour before I got into the club. And then you get in and you see that they've been sitting there drinking champagne in the VIP area all the time while I was standing out and getting cold. Now, when I moved to Asia and I moved to Thailand, I had a digital marketing agency, and some of my clients were nightclubs. And so accidentally, I kind of got into this VIP status. So we did the marketing for clubs, including the Ministry of Sound, which it launched in Thailand. And sure enough, there'd be a big queue of people outside. And because I was running the marketing, I could walk straight up and say hello to the bouncers and get waved in and get put into the VIP area. And what I realized was it wasn't just the fact that you got past the queue, it was that you got to meet the other VIPs and the drinks were generally free. And the discussion was really interesting. And I ended up winning more business because I was in those VIP rooms. And it sort of I stopped going to clubs because I wanted to go clubbing. I started going to clubs because it was where I was meeting great clients in these VIP rooms. And it really kind of struck me that that was the kind of the bit that I'd been missing before. When I was in the UK, I didn't even know how you get into to become a VIP. And suddenly I'd sort of accidentally stumbled into it. And it became a point in every career or every business that I've started since, is to find myself in try and get into those inner rooms. I also realized that it's not enough to just get in there. You also have a responsibility to try and get other people in. So you want to be, and the more you can help more people to get successful, the better it becomes for you and for everyone. And it stops being about exclusivity and it becomes about being inclusive and bringing as many people along with you as possible. Um, so Marco is saying, so get into the VIP rooms, but what with credibility? Okay, yeah, we're going to cover that. So This is the 5-step formula that I'm going to share with you today. It spells cares. The first one is connections. The second one is authority. So that's the credibility that Marco's asking about. The third one is reach. The fourth one is equity. And the fifth one is service. And I'm going to bring in speakers for 4 of those to share how they've kind of used those principles. But let's get into it. So here's a good question for you, because this is something that I've been working on for about 20 years, is sort of very, very deliberately building connections. What do you think is more important when you're building connections? Do you think it's quantity or do you think it's quality? I'd love to hear what you think. Quality, 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 both. Quality, quality mix. Okay. All right. Quality, quality, both, both. I think both, both. Okay. Some people are hedging. Very wise. All right. Look, the general consensus, if you if you go and look on LinkedIn, excuse me, if you go and look on LinkedIn about any of these conversations about building connections, they will often say to focus on quality. I kind of have a they're right up to a point. Now, first of all, if you have to dismiss the whole humanity of who's a quality person and who's not a quality person. But even taking that out out of the equation, oftentimes what people mean is they only want to meet like the decision maker, or they only want to meet the CEO of the company. The challenge with that is that so does everyone else. And so it ends up being quite a challenge to build that. Now, what I discovered earlier on was when I started looking to build my network, it was very difficult for me to get to that quality. And so, excuse me. And so I ended up thinking about quantity. And what I realized was that if you build enough connections, you become valuable. And you can see this to a certain extent with influencers these days. It's not who are they influencing, it's the numbers that is what attracts them. So if they've got 200,000 followers or 1 million followers, we don't say, well, who are these followers? We just go, wow, that's really impressive. And so there is value in volume. And in my book, Progressive Partnerships, which you'll all get a free copy of as you're going through the form. Basically, I talk about the fact that if you picked any category of people, it could be impoverished students, it could be caretakers, it could be secretaries, it could be salespeople. If you build your connections and you build enough connections with those people and you create enough value, then that connections in itself becomes valuable. Okay, so one of the things that I came up with quite a lot when I started doing this was up until that point. So when I moved to Thailand, I kind of found myself without a network, and it was the first time I actually had to start building my network. And initially, I started off by looking for friends. Now, what I very quickly realized was that when you're building a network, when you're building connections deliberately, you don't want to be thinking in terms of friends. You want to be thinking in terms of value. Some of my best friends create very little value in the world. They're very entertaining, but they don't create much value. And I work with other people who I wouldn't particularly want to hang out and drink beer with, uh, but they're incredibly good at what they do. And actually, the more connected you are to a wider range of people, and the more talent that you've got in your network, even if it's completely diverse talent, the more able you are to put deals together and to think entrepreneurially. And it stops being about what you know and it starts being about who's around you. So, in terms of building your connections, I want you to start thinking in terms of value rather than friendship. And it really changes everything. And I also, it's useful to think in terms of not just the person in front of you, but who does the person in front of you know? So again, if you go and put a comment in that LinkedIn post and then connect with the other people, the other 150 people that are currently on this call. And by the way, there'll probably be another couple of hundred people that will watch the recording of this and go to that LinkedIn profile. or go to that LinkedIn post, then you can connect with those. And you might not see a direct connection now or a direct way they could add value to you, but think about, who do they know? Who do they know in the past? Who do they potentially know in the future? And when you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about that value equation, it completely changes the way that you approach building a network. And what I realized going through this was, most people, their networks are very organic. And so what I mean by that is, it's just who you went to school with, who you went, who your colleagues are. But if you want to get in the right room, you've got to start being very, very deliberate about who you connect with. And so that means you kind of need to learn about getting interested and interesting. And yeah, if you're going networking events, boring questions get boring answers. Let me just, okay. Right, let me skim through these. So one of the things that I'm also going to encourage you to think about is, most people, when they decide that they want to build connections, they'll go to networking events. Makes perfect sense. Or they'll go on LinkedIn. What I would like you to think about, and what our first speaker is going to share, is, rather than go to a networking event, think about creating a networking event. Think about how you can create enough attraction. So rather than you have to go and try and be in other people's networks, they want to be in your network. And what I realized was that there's three things that everybody has that will make you want to be in their network, or make them want to be in your network. And the three things are information, connections, and entertainment. So if you think about it, your friends kind of fall in entertainment, but there'll be people in your network that are the people you go to for tech advice. There'll be the people that you go to for social media advice. That's the information quotient. You'll also have other people in your network that you go to because they're well connected. And so in business, the two things that you really kind of want to be known for is either information or connections. And if you can do both, so much the better as well. Now, my teenage daughters tell me that everything doesn't have to be so deep. That's their, seems to be their slang word at the moment. So relationships don't need to be deep, but they do need to be useful. And in fact, actually, there's been a lot of studies done. Close relationships are generally less valuable to you than secondary relationships. So light connections. It's more about volume. Okay, so slides are being a bit sluggish today. So I want you to, yes, just start thinking about, why would people want to be in your network? I go into this in a lot more depth in this book, which you'll all get a copy with. Just click the box that says it. And basically, I'm going to share with you how do you get to a point where you can build these networks? And it's the reason why connections are so valuable. And again, this kind of comes back to the changing face of careers, is that up until now, you've been hired for your ability to solve a problem. And yet what I realized was, people in the inner circle very rarely solve the problem themselves. They almost always go out to somebody else to solve the problem. And one of the companies that I'll touch on later, Veblen Director Program, where we put together boards for companies and we train board members. And a big part of the kind of the unlearning that people have to do is to stop thinking in terms of trying to fix everything themselves, and instead focus on having people around you that can do it better than you. And it's a different skill set, but it's much more valuable, because obviously there's many more people out there than just yourself. So instead of asking how questions, one of the most useful switches that I found was to start asking who questions. So if you find yourself stuck with, I can't get a job, or I can't get a promotion, or I can't get a board seat, or I can't raise capital for my business, instead of asking yourself, how do I solve that? Start asking, who already knows the answer to this? Who already has the solution? Who would benefit if I'm successful at this? Who do I want on my side to make this work? And when you start asking who questions, there's always someone you can talk to. So let me know in the chat, does that all make sense for you in terms of focusing on who? Quantity, Ben, hey Ben, quantity until you find quality. Yep, absolutely. And it is a bit of a progressive piece. So as you start to build your network and you get a bit of momentum, more and more people want to join them. So yeah, this idea of create your own network. Now, a lot of people kind of think, well, what Paul says be mercenary. Look, I understand why it sounds like that, but it's just kind of it doesn't mean that you can't be friends with people, but it does mean that you focus, in fact, in terms of how you add value. And ultimately, when we talk about service, the more people you can serve, the more valuable you become. And so you can't, there's only 24 hours in the day. So you want to have a network around you that can help you with that. My contention is that anyone that can organize a few drinks out with friends can organize a networking event. So I think it's worth thinking about, if you were to organize a networking event, who would be the most valuable people that you would want in that? And the way I like to think about it is, if we were to meet up in 3 years' time and you'd spent the last 3 years building a network, who would you want that network to be? Who would you want to be in the center of? So for some people, it might be marketing directors. For some people, it might be investors. We're going to see an amazing story later on today of somebody that built an incredible investor network. In fact, our next speaker is going to share about how she's built an amazing investor network. So start thinking. In fact, let me know in the chat, because there'll also be other people in the chat with a similar outcome. Who would you like to be in the center of a network of? So I actually put together a 6-week course. So our next speaker went through this 6-week program, which is called Get Launched. And it basically shows you how to put together these networks around whatever topic that you like, how you find sponsors, how you get free venues, how you get people to pay to attend. So you're not just building a network, you're actually building a revenue stream, as well as becoming the most connected person in the industry. And so with that, I am going to introduce our first speaker. So I was trying to remember earlier today, maybe Marcella can tell me, but I think we went through this in, was it February of this year, where Marcella joined the 6-week program, and she was looking to build a network in London. And I'm going to let her share with you the incredible results that she's got. So if Marcella, are you there? There
Yes,
she
I'm
is.
here.
Hey, lovely to see you.
Hello, great to see
Um,
you.
cool. So have you got slide control there? Okay, it's just a couple of minutes while we do the handover. But cool. While Marcella's just getting set up, do let me know in the chat what your thoughts are on connections, and I'll have a look through those. And with that, I will leave it to you, Marcella.
Thank you very much, Callum. Yes, I went through the Get Launched course, which was fantastic. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about connections today. Go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. So just a little bit about myself, as Callum mentioned, you could go back. I am a venture. Can you just go back one slide, please? Thank you. Just about me, I am Italian American Brazilian. I am a venture partner, work on business growth consulting, and work on investor relations, and also am a board member to 3 startups. I am also in the Veblen Directors Program. And go to the next slide, please. So, as Callum mentioned, I was new to London. I had lived all over the world. I was born in Brazil, grew up in the US, lived in Dubai, lived in Rio, lived in Miami, Boston, DC, and Paris. And so I was living in Paris 2 years before. And I came to London and I did what Callum said. I tried to create my own network. I went to a bunch of meetup events. And what I found was that it was a group of people who were trying to sell to each other. So everybody was an entrepreneur or kind of solopreneur. And it just seemed very varied. The people seemed to be not the people that I really wanted to get in touch with. So um, I really tried to be very, somebody's saying a room full of pictures. That's exactly it. And so I got very burnt out because I tried to do the volume thing in a certain sense. And so I just went out every night, out Eventbrite, looking up things, and I had my whole calendar set up. But then, thinking through this, what did I really want? And I really wanted to get in touch with people, start pivoting my career. And I was very interested in impact investing. So I actually started to look for impact investing events. So from going to broad networking events, I then looked to impact investing. And the one big impact investing event that I got in touch with, they actually never wrote to me back because they're global, but they didn't have any events going on in London. I wrote to a few other ones. They also didn't get back to me. So I said, okay, maybe I need to take things into my own hands. So I thought, what is like what Callum just said? I'm starting where I am now. I'm in London. I want to find opportunities. I want to find, grow a network of, professionals who are in an area that I'm interested in. And so after the networking events didn't work out, after the going online and finding more specific ones didn't work out, I then got to kind of search mode. So I basically thought of the first thing I did is think of an archetype. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, as I mentioned, there were no clear communities that were already available. And then I wanted to really look for who did I actually want to be in this network? As I started looking at my future in London, what did I really want to pivot towards in the long term? Next slide, please. And so I started building up my network. So the first thing I did is I started to learn a bit more about impact investing, which is an area that I had learned about in the past, but I wanted to see how things had changed. So did a lot of research on it, looked at what types of names that were there, who are the people, who are the important actors in this space, what are the important organizations in this space. So I really did, a Google sheet of all this kind of stuff. And then I went to LinkedIn. And so with this first information, I got that and I said, okay, what are the actual archetypes of the types of people that I actually want? So what do those look like on LinkedIn? So from my research, I looked, okay, what are the names? What are the terms? How am I going to find these people on LinkedIn? And so at that time, I had LinkedIn, just normal LinkedIn, and I started doing the search, and I was maxing out my connection requests every week. And then the process got a little bit unwieldy. And so what I did actually, you can do this with normal LinkedIn, but I decided to actually pay for LinkedIn because I thought it was something that, was useful enough. And so I actually started creating lists in Sales Navigator on that. And then also, that was like a little bit of and I would not suggest keeping it on Sales Navigator. I would suggest doing your own kind of CRM, basically an Excel spreadsheet. And then I started calling people because I think that a lot of times you won't get a lot of responses. So there are ways to call people to find people's numbers. I didn't do this an enormous amount. I just tried to, kind of contact them. Most of the time I did email them. So there are ways to, find their emails, apollo.io, an email finder. Um, these are tools that I started looking because when people didn't respond on LinkedIn, and this happens a lot, people are being overwhelmed. You can go to the contact from email and then potentially calling them. So next slide, please. So, basically, as I mentioned, I was maxing out my connections every week. It was a lot of people, but you really need to get a lot of people to get a good amount of people. So it was really connecting with the crowd. And as soon as I connected with them, I really did kind of write to them specifically with a call to action. So, I decided to create this event. And when I created it, in Eventbrite, and, kind of gave it a fancy title, a nice kind of image. I really like understood how to make it nice. And then my call to action was, we're having this event. Would you like to come? And then details to follow, because I didn't have a place yet. So next slide, please. So that was the invitation. Oftentimes, and I think Callum may talk about this, but people are bombarded. People are bombarded. There's email tools that are available. There's LinkedIn AI tools where you can literally spam people, with thousands of messages. So really, the thing that, and this takes a lot of time, and I think that this is one thing I want to say. It takes time. It's not just, you're doing it, connecting with people and that's it. No, you have to write to them again, write to them 2 times. When you're doing that, once the event is finally coming, remind them 2, 3 times. It sounds crazy, but people actually don't see the messages. So with this, I invited them. I had a call to action. From that, I then started getting a sense of what these numbers could be, and then I sent them a reminder and then I sent them the event with the actual place, time, a place, and because the time and date I had already set, the kind of like RSVP kind of thing. So with that, then I went to the actual place where I wanted to have it. I went to see many places from when I kind of put the save the date. So I had a date, and then I went to a bunch of places and told them about this event. I actually visited them, talked to them, told them that, over, these people were being invited. It was a really interesting group of people. Could we get this space for free? So really kind of saying, but obviously I told them about how many people would be there. They would be connected to this new space. And I really did not want it to be like a boring meeting room. I wanted to have a very kind of cool cocktail type of networking feel. So because when you have this idea of a place that's not, a boring sit down place, and people are actually surprised by the place, it's amazing. So I actually found this place through friends of mine. I asked absolutely everybody I knew, what is a kind of, very cool after work space that we can go to. They suggested this private members club, which was great. They were very happy of having people on Wednesdays or Thursdays. Those were low days for them, and they gave me the space for free. Um, and so from there, you can go on to the next slide. um, Impact Catalyst Circle was born. So here's a view of the events. On the right side, you can't see, but there's a little pool on the right side. It was a very, very fun, very kind of, because I worked on the archetype so well, you can see that these are people who are very engaged, or talking to each other, and everything. And so with this, a few notes. The time is short. We can talk about it later, but I'll give you a few things. Definitely location, so important. You can see that we were having the events at sunset. There was a pool, there was a vibe, there was music. And that's important. The intentionality about charisma, even, I am quite extrovert in some ways, but this is a challenge for me. So actually being intentional about charisma, seeing myself not as the main person, but the person kind of facilitating things. Every time somebody came in that looked a little bit um, lost, I just went directly to them. Uh, and then brought them in so that they didn't feel alone. And that's a very important thing too, because people are usually coming to this, they're very unsure, don't know anybody often. So really making people feel very comfortable. And that is just being human, to just go up to them. Hi, what's your name? You've come to the event, all these kinds of things. Before this, I tried to figure out who was actually coming. So that is also a little bit of work too. So I did know some of them when they were coming. I kind of memorized in my head what they look like from their LinkedIn to their emails. Sometimes you don't always get that. But that is actually nice if you can actually remember a few details. And so try not to like think about absolutely everything you've ever read about them, just like 2 or 3 details. I think it's very good. And your job is really to make sure everyone is talking to in the event itself. You might be very kind of drawn to a conversation, but always, have like one eyeball on the conversation and one eyeball, around the room so that you can see if people are outside and by themselves and things like that. That does tend to happen sometimes. Sometimes people want to come to these events and then they get a little bit nervous. So yeah, I think I would say that, for me, you can go to the next slide. So what are the results of this? And so I'll finish, I'll start to finish here. Next slide, please. And this is a construction, really. So what are the results? I got so many connection requests or connections from this. So these are so what started happening is I started, really seeing new thoughts, insights on my feed. Very simple, but actually very interesting. I got asked to be on a podcast because of this. I got asked to actually be one of the initial free users of this amazing platform that kind of connects people with investors and helps them find investors. So I'm getting to see a little bit of the background of this process. I got to speak. I got new friends, and now I'm in an interview process that I had only seen because I was in a in this because if you think about it, once you get new connections, you start to see their content, and so things open up to you that you couldn't even see. So I did see this job, and I applied to it because I saw this on one of the connections. Um, it's a quite a high level job, and so we're in the process right now. But these are things that I never would have been able to see, and it is, as Francie is saying, a ripple effect. So next slide, please. And I got to make friends. Because of this, I even got asked to go to the Tweed Run, which is for those of you who are familiar with London. Sometimes they have this where everybody dresses up in these like 1930s costumes. I made friends and all these kinds of things here, and you never know where this will take you. And this is where I'll end. You can do the last slide, please. You never know where things will end. Sorry, we got through a little bit of the how, but I'll go through these very quickly because I know we're at the end. But I was just talking, but yeah, so just going through like kind of wrapping it all up. So who do you want to connect with? Like really have a strategy. Why do you want to connect? Be very specific, as I mentioned before. Think about those archetypes. What do you want out of it? Is it a job? Is it a board seat? Also very important, identify what's in it for them. Like, can they meet new people? Can they, be connected? Can they have like expand their network? Can the venue get more people? Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned to you, tactics, an event should be broad, but not too broad. So I did impact investing. I did do specific, like, kind of investing in sustainability or energy or Africa or whatever. I would really say don't charge entry in the beginning. LinkedIn messages plus emails, those tools that I mentioned, Anymail, Apollo.io, there's a bunch of them. You can get people's emails. Then remind people more than you think you should, as I mentioned before. Always do that. Post on LinkedIn. This I didn't do for every event. Keep tabs on the people. Take pictures, so important. You can see here one of our speakers was there. I did events without speakers and with speakers. I think it's good to experiment with that. Always track events. I did feedback forms also. Reuse your list. Don't forget about them. Put them in one place. Don't keep them on Eventbrite or LinkedIn. Speakers are social lubricants in some ways, but they should be kept very short. But they're a good jumping off point for people to actually talk about what happened. I would say I'm a perfectionist. Don't strive for perfection. If you can just do it, just do it. And then send feedback form. Thank you. Comment on as many posts as possible so you can get it out there. Next slide. I think we're almost coming to the end. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's all I had to share with you. Some learnings and then kind of a bit of a wrap up. Hope that's helpful and would love to connect with you all. Here's my LinkedIn. Thank you.
That was very cool, Marcella. I like it's so cool because we went through that 6 weeks together, and I know like you were going through, should I, what should the network be about? Should it be impact? Should it be ESG? And to get to where you've got to now. And I think what's really interesting, I've noticed, so I was introducing a couple of projects to you just a few days ago. What happens is when you become a network leader, there's this assumption that you must know everyone in the network. And so what happens is everyone in the network comes to you with opportunities. Some of them are right for you, some of them aren't right for you. And so you just push them back into the network and say, hey, is anyone interested in this? And the more opportunities you push back into your network, the more opportunities flow up to you. So it sort of
Yeah.
becomes this this cycle. So I'm gonna get you back in 30 minutes or so, and we're going to do a panel with our next speaker. But I think anyone that is thinking about starting a network event, go back and rewatch what Marcella shared, because yeah, there's absolutely so many good insights in that. And yeah, no, just tons of really good stuff in that. So thank you very much. And I've got a few questions for you. If you have questions for Marcella, stick them in the chat, and we'll try and get them into when we do a quick panel later. So awesome. I will see if I can get my slides back up. We'll crack into the next thing. So cool. Let me know in the chat. Did you get what were your kind of key takeaways from that? And do you think that you could create your own networking event? Look, people think it's a lot of work, and in one regard it is, but the payoff that you get from creating your own network event is, I haven't seen anything else that delivers as good a return as networking events do. So the next one that we're going to crack into is authority. And so one of the things Marcella said was people are overwhelmed with messages, and that's correct. Yeah, we all are. And one of the things we look at when we get a message is, who is this person to be contacting us? Do they have authority? And so you can have the best connections in the world, but if people don't value you as an authority in some capacity, then they're not going to pay, you're not going to get much traction on your ideas. And so everything that I talk about, these 5 frameworks, they all compound on each other. So the more you have, the easier things become. Look, you'll all be familiar with this idea that 2 people can say the exact same thing and only one gets listened to. And even though there's only a camera in one direction, I know every single woman on this call is nodding in agreement at this point. So it happens a lot to women, is that they say something, nobody listens in the workplace, and somebody else says, a male says the exact same thing, and gets the response. It also happens with males, I will point out. And it's about authority. It's about people's perception of you. And so what we need to do, and what I needed to do as a young entrepreneur, was, how do I shortcut that authority? How do I get to a point where all these connections that we're building actually value your input? And so it's about making sure that people do trust you when your message comes through. Just go back a slide. Okay, now, so a lot of people think that it's about your background. And again, this is kind of where I think the career path is whole, it's all shifting. Yeah, so we used to kind of rely on signals from our past. But I think more and more people actually want to know, what are you delivering right now? Authority is contextual. So one of the things, yeah, Daniel Priestley, and I'll touch on Daniel Priestley later, but he talks about publishing content as a great way to build your authority. Author, if you're an author of a book, that is the authority on that book. But there's other ways that you can do it, and it's trying to find out what will stand out for the network that you're trying to build. So again, if you look 3 years in the future and say, okay, I was glad I started building a group of, or a network of connections in this particular industry, because that now serves me really, really well. What would be the authority that you would like to have? And maybe it's you're the CEO of a company, maybe it's you are an author of a book, maybe it's you're a speaker on stage or a director of a company. And this is kind of what I was trying to get to with the Veblen Director Program. And interesting, like this actually, I saw this posted yesterday, so it's October 2nd. So the CEO of LinkedIn is saying, even LinkedIn CEO is saying, the future of work won't belong to people with degrees anymore. Now, this is something, as a small business owner, I have been saying for many, many years. So even Google and PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, both did internal studies a few years ago, and they compared employees with degrees versus employees without degrees. And statistically, there was no difference in the ability of somebody to do their job, which, yeah, we all understand that's true. But so many companies will have as their cutoff point, if you don't have a degree or if you don't have your master's or whatever, you can't get, or if you didn't go to an Ivy League university, you can't get a role with us. And yet, actually, it didn't have that much impact on whether they could do the job. Now, small businesses like my own took advantage of this. We said, okay, we're not interested in your career background, like we're not interested in your academic awards. What we're interested in is the results that you deliver. Um, so here we go. So look, what I was trying to learn very early on in my career was if everything is about perception, how do you systematically engineer those perceptions? And one of the things that I noticed very early on was I had an inflated impression of anyone that was sitting on a board. When people said that they were members of boards, I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I didn't really know what a board was, but I wanted to sit on one because it sounded cool. And so I started to look into boards and how you get on boards. And it's one of the things that you will find when I set up the Veblen Director Program, you'll hear is that when people have these badges, like I sit on the board of XYZ company, it does give you authority. And so if you go back to the point that Marcella was making about how difficult it is to get your message through, the more authority you have, the easier it becomes to get your message through. So Marcella was new in London. Nobody knew her. She was trying to build an impact investing network. Of course, people are kind of a bit skeptical. Who is this? I don't know this person. Why are they mailing me? But as you build your authority, it becomes much, much easier to get people to listen to you. One of the things, and look, this is I guess, the most important point, and I'll drill on into it later, but the one truly scarce asset that we all have is time. And I do remember many, many years ago looking at Richard Branson and trying to figure out, how does he do so many things? And at that point, he had done 7 different businesses in 7 different industries that had all become billion-dollar businesses. And I remember thinking, how does he get so much done so quickly? Now you look at Elon Musk, same sort of question. And partly it's because they've got this massive network around them, lots and lots of people know them, but they have this huge authority. And so when they talk, people listen, stuff just moves quicker. And I think if you take nothing else away from today, everything that you're looking at and everything that I'm talking about is really about how you can speed up the process to get the results that you want. So question for you is, what do you think builds professional credibility? Is there something that you've done recently that you feel has given you a boost in this area? Is there something that you see other people and you think, "Oh, if I had that, life would be a lot easier"? So what's depends on the role. Yep, to a certain extent, there are key things. So part of my assumption of everyone on this call is that you're already good at what you do. And the point is, it's not the people that are best at what they do that get ahead. It's the people that are able to tap into these frameworks and able to tap into the right connections, have the right authority. So things like technical skills, yeah, but that's kind of that's entry level to the thing that you're trying to do. Delivery on your promise, absolutely. So that's a key area. So our next speaker is Susie, and I always enjoy bringing Susie on as a speaker to many of my events. So Susie joined us, Veblen Director Program, just before Christmas, when everybody else was stuffing stockings, Susie was applying to join the Veblen Director Program. So I think she joined on Christmas Eve or something like that, and then has just had an absolutely incredible journey since then. In, I guess it's 9-10 months now. So I was very, very keen for her to come and share some of her story, because it's truly remarkable, and I think you will learn a lot from Susie. Yeah, I will hand over to you. And if you have any questions for Susie or Marcella, put them in the chat, and I will do a panel discussion with both of them after this. So over to you, Susie.
Thank you, Callum, and hello, everybody. Looking forward to having our discussion later. But yeah, very pleased to be able to be part of this call and to tell you a little bit more about my experience over the last sort of 9 or 10 months. As Callum said, it's been pretty speedy since I joined Veblen. And in how I moved into the board role, and you know, from not really having any experience in board roles last year to being now holding quite a number of board seats. So if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is just really an introduction to show you where I am now. So this is my current board portfolio. So this is what I've managed to achieve in 9 months. And then in the next slides, I'll take you through some of the things that I did to get here. So I'm chair of one board, Evidence to Impact, which is a UK company, a social enterprise. I'm a board member of Nordic AI, which is headquartered in Norway, an AI company. Board member of LabShare AI, which is based in Texas in the US. A board member of Home from Home Care Homes in the UK, and a board member of Maltix, which is based in Malta in Europe. I'm also a governor of a NHS trust, a trustee of a very small educational charity local to me, and I'm also a parish councillor in my village, which I see as a different flavour of board role. And my philosophy really that I've followed all the time is never underestimate your value, and this is also what I tell everybody else. Everybody has a lot to bring, and every single one of you on this call has a lot to offer a board. You move to the next slide. So thinking about building authority, I feel I need to sort of ask these questions, and I think these are things that I keep coming back to. So a lot of this pathway has been quite self-reflective. So number one, why am I doing this? Why do I want to build authority? Why do I want to, you know, do that through board roles? So I think four reasons here that are significant to me. So giving back is one of them. So I've been in the life science industry for over 30 years. Got a lot of commercial experience that I've built things globally. I've done a lot of business development and so on. And you know, I don't just want to do that in one company. I want to be able to share that as widely as possible. I really want to be able to lift others. So, you know, I'm later on in my career now, and I want to be able to help others to be successful more quickly. You know, why not share my experience and help them cut corners? And I want to be able to make a difference. So those are really the 4 things that I'm looking to be able to do through entering this journey. And how can I do that? So board roles was an obvious one to me, and that was clear that board roles was a good fit both for me personally and also a good way to fulfill all those whys. And building authority actually is more than just board roles. Board roles is one way to do it, but building authority generally is a good thing. And to do that, I need to improve my network. I need to be able to share my thought leadership publicly and share what makes me me. And I think that's where this photo on this slide comes in. Many of you will recognize the background there is Yellowstone National Park, one of the hot steamy pools there. And what makes me me, one of the things is that I love being out in nature. I'm a big environmentalist. I'm very keen on natural things, both natural beauty and, you know, the excitement of what the natural world can achieve. This is also a very special place for anybody in the life science industry, which has been built really on a very small organism that was isolated from one of these hot pools back in decades and decades back, and really led to the foundation of the life science industry as we know it today, which really took off in the 1980s. So that's where I've spent my life, and it's as a result of something that came from one of these hot pools in Yellowstone. So my authority journey, which I'm going to go through in a bit more detail, has consisted of networking, a combination of podcasts and speaking, and also publishing. So let's move to the next slide. So networking, and with each of these pieces, I'm just going to go through a list of all the different ways I've done this. I've tried to find the easiest ways to do it. I'm not somebody who wants to spend a lot of time on something that, you know, doesn't bring many results. I'm trying to find how to do things fast. So the easiest way to start networking is just connecting with more people on LinkedIn, exactly as Marcella was saying earlier. Commenting and reposting on LinkedIn. So if you're commenting and reposting from somebody's post who's already got a lot of followers that you don't know, suddenly they see you. They may click on your profile and have a look. They may want to connect with you. Updating my LinkedIn profile, making it more interesting to the type of people that I want to be connected with. Joining free online networking events. So I've put free in there because I like the idea of joining free ones so that you get a good turnover of new people coming into those events. I know these are not necessarily as good as creating your own, as Marcella had created and as Callum states, but this is what I've done so far. It's definitely worked. It's got me one board seat through doing that. Joining Veblen. So joining Veblen back in December, I think I actually didn't get started till January. I did enjoy my Christmas. So that gave me access to an international board network, as well as training and support in how to connect better with people. Informal introductory calls, and I've highlighted this because that's really where the magic happens. So all those other pieces on this list are a way of getting you to that informal introductory call. And really, that's when you can get to know somebody, they can get to know you, and you can see how you can help each other. And that's the next one on the list. So offer to help. So it's all about how can you help them. It's not about pitching. I've never pitched in any of my introductory calls. It's all about getting a feel for what that person's life is like, telling them a bit about yourself, what you do, and seeing, you know, is there some kind of intersection there that you can both help each other. And also in-person business gatherings as well. So I've done 1 or 2 of those, but I would say most of my work has actually been online. Can we move to the next slide? So number 2 is podcasts. So these 2 pictures on the right-hand side are of me in 2 of the podcasts that I've done this year. So I've done 3 that have been published so far. I'm looking for more. And the great thing about podcasts is that the person doing the podcast probably wants to get these things publicized. So they're going to start publicizing it for you for a start. And then you can also use the podcast yourself. Usually they're very happy for you to republish what they're doing as well. So again, it's a win-win for both the podcast host and for yourself. And I've added them to my LinkedIn profile. It absolutely adds authority and credibility to your LinkedIn profile. I've also done several speaking engagements, rather like this one, mostly online. I have done an in-person one as well. When you do those, make sure you get some photos from those speaking events and you can create a LinkedIn post. Publishing. So that's the third one, creating my own LinkedIn posts. So that's the easiest way to do publishing. If you think about all the different ways you could publish, creating a post on social media is the easiest one. LinkedIn is the place that I know the people I want to connect with are active. And so that's where I wanted to focus my time. Quickest way to do this, use AI. So use it for ideas, use it to format something that you've written yourself, use it to suggest hashtags. Make sure you have a quality image. So the image is really, really important in posts. It's something that it's a scroll stopper, basically. So it stops people moving on if they see an unusual or different image. Selfies are really, really popular. So if you put a selfie in there, it will actually work better. Apparently, this is what people tell me. I haven't actually used it all that much, but selfies apparently work really, really well. I've also got some really good ones from pexels.com, which is you can download free, really good quality free images from. Also think about what you're doing each week. What can you create a post about what you're doing? If you're speaking at an event, make sure you get a photo, create a post from it. I also promote the companies I'm on boards for, so I'm doing them a favor as well, getting what they're doing out there, helping to put my spin on what they're doing and hopefully getting them some more business. And I'm also sharing a bit about myself, and that's really important. So this builds you out as a much more rounded person if you can share not just your business expertise, but a bit about yourself as a person. People connect with people. That's what it's about. And the other thing I do is a weekly short article, which comes as part of my Veblen membership. So they send me a question once a week. I have to send a very short number of words response. They publish it, and then online, it's published online, and then I repost that on LinkedIn. So another great way of publishing. Thank you. Next slide. And the final thing to think about is to reflect. So I think I started this section with saying you need to be reflective all the way through. So looking first of all at the results. So I've secured so far 5 commercial board seats, 1 public sector board seat, 1 charity board seat. I'm working in multiple countries. The companies I'm supporting are headquartered in multiple countries in the EU and in the US, and also across multiple industries. Am I fulfilling the why? Keep going back to that. Is this what you're trying to do? Yes, I'm giving back. Yes, I'm sharing my expertise more widely. Last year, I was only sharing my expertise in 1 company and I wasn't sharing on LinkedIn. Am I lifting others? Absolutely. I'm helping multiple CEOs and leadership teams. Am I making a difference? Yes, I'm helping. And some of my work is with charity work. Some of it's pro bono. So yes, I'm making a difference. So that's ticking boxes for me. Is there more to do? Absolutely. So this is just the start of my board portfolio. I'm sort of looking initially at the moment to make a bit more environmental impact. I haven't got anything in my board portfolio that allows me to do that. I'm already posting thought leadership about it on LinkedIn, and I'm also looking for larger company boards. So I'm probably full up on my small companies, and now I want to see how I can help impact larger companies as well. Thank you very much. That's all from me.
Awesome. So that's really, really cool. Every time, so I kind of get you on to speak at my events on a fairly regular basis, and every time you add in something new, I'm not quite sure when you sleep, but yeah, incredible what you've achieved. So can we get Marcella back as well, and we'll do a quick Q&A. There we go. Awesome. So look, thank you both for your presentations. Really, really inspiring. A couple of questions from me, and the same question for both of you actually is, you've both done stuff that if nobody had thought, if they hadn't thought about it before, it kind of sounds big and somewhat overwhelming. So one of you started a network in impact investors in London. Susie, you've got a bunch of board seats. What has been your biggest learning? And I guess a follow-up to that would also be, now you know what you know, is there anything that you would do differently? So Marcella, let's start with you. Biggest learning, and what would you do differently?
Um, I think the biggest learning is that it's not that scary. I mean, when I was in the program with you, it took me so long to get over that hump of, okay, I'm gonna actually do this. I'm gonna, and so I saw some of the comments and questions. They thought it was, kind of bold to do, to like set out a save the date, but that's because I could not do it. I could not do it. So I'm like, I'm gonna put my feet to the fire. I'm going to save the date, and then I'm going to figure it out. So I gave myself like a month, because the other, I always had something else to do. I always had, there was 5 million things to do. I couldn't do this, and so that's what I would say. Have some way to force you. I know that there's some introverts here, in the comments, and if you kind of change a little bit and you say, it's not about me, it's about what people are going to get from it. It takes a little bit, and this is also for events, for public speaking, for anything like this. If you take the focus off yourself, then it'll be better. And also, if you put these things where you have to act, that really gets you going, because it took me a long time to get to that point. And then it does get easier, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and people will enjoy if you make them feel comfortable and things like that. So that's what I would say.
Very cool. Very cool. What about you, Susie?
So I think it's having the right people around you. So I think that's the biggest learning that I've had this year. So both, the Veblen network has been a big part of this for me. The people within the Veblen network are absolutely amazing. I've met lots of like-minded people that way as well, which is nice. So you feel, okay, I'm not silly or unusual thinking or wanting to do this. There are other people who want to do this too. Let's help each other. And I think probably the thing that I might have changed is probably just to do all of that quicker and sooner. So just be bolder about networking. Let's not worry about connecting with lots more people and getting that done sooner. I think initially back in January, I was a little bit, should I connect with this person? What should I say? And all this sort of thing. I was thinking it all too deeply, and it's just meet as many people as you can and things will come.
I don't think anyone watching has thought you've been slow in your but that's good. Marcel, so we have a question from Darren. Hi, Darren. So Darren is asking, did you use event management tools? Did you ask people to formally register for the event? Was there what was the no-show rate? What sort of those
So yeah, good question.
things?
So in terms of this, I just use Eventbrite. Don't overcomplicate it. There's also Luma that allows you to do other things. But yeah, don't overcomplicate it. That's one of the things that was stopping me from doing things, Should I do this? Is there a better platform here? So for free events, I would say no-show rates are about 50%. So you really need to pack it in there. A 50%, especially if it's raining in London, especially, people just have things to do. People are quite busy here, especially. So yeah, don't overthink it, but send a lot of reminders. Send, as I mentioned, I sent the follow-up for feedback, because that these are all things that are touch points that are getting people into your mind. So the next time you have an event, they'll be like, okay, I remember that. I remember it was pretty good. And send photos in the email, all these kinds of things. And I also sent, besides with the feedback form, I sent, kind of what the event was like with the photos, and then had the feedback form there too. So it's kind of like a closing. Which is nice.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. It's very easy to kind of procrastinate, to avoid hard conversations by just doing one more bit of research and watching one more video and finding one perfect tool. And actually, yeah, just get started does.
And start before you're ready, I think, is the main thing. You know, you will figure it out along the way. But, you know, I'm a chronic overthinker, and that's why it took me so long to do it. So yeah, just start before you're ready.
But like, by the way, you're saying it took you so long. Like, it was a couple of months and you launched an impact investing network, and
Yeah.
now, like, you know, you've had some incredible people that have come to that network. And you've run multiple events since then. So yeah, it's a perception of time. It feels very slow at the time, but it's actually very quick. Suze, a question for you from Ashwin. How do you get speaking engagements?
Through your network. So just talk to people. You'll find some people are looking for speakers, particularly some of these small podcasting people. They're looking to build, they're looking for people, they're looking for somebody interesting who's got something interesting to say. The more people you talk to, you just come across these. I've also worked through, you know, local events, alumni. I've spoken at a university alumni event. Just basically anywhere that there's an opportunity that you could possibly speak, just investigate it.
Yeah, perfect. And that's a fantastic lead into our next section, which is reach. But ultimately as well, like, say, the more people that know you, the more people are likely to have speaking opportunities, and then they're going to look for people with authority. So somebody that organizes a networking event, somebody that sits on boards, somebody that organizes a networking event and sits on boards. You know, the more authority points you've got, the more people are going to want to hear from you and hear your story. And then you both do an amazing job, which also makes life very easy for the hosts. So
Callum, can I just say one thing on that? If you want to make it happen faster, you know, you just search podcasts with the titles and suggest a few topics that you can talk on. You know, the power of proposing things is really, I think today we have to do it even more to create opportunities for ourselves. Find, propose, and just shoot your shot, I would say.
Yeah, I've done that too, Marcella, so I would totally agree with that.
Great advice. All right, awesome. Thank you very much to both of you. Lots of nice comments in the chat. Go and follow Marcella and Susie on LinkedIn. They're regularly posting cool stuff. And yeah, the power of proposing. Don't propose. Just be careful. It can be expensive proposing. All right, let's move on to the next thing. That was great. We've got two more speakers coming up that will also, I'm really looking forward to. Slightly different approach, but yeah, really cool stuff. And for those people that are interested in the Veblen program or how you get your first board seat, I actually do a free workshop, and I think in the workbook that you've currently got, you'll get access to a recording of a past one. So it's a 90-minute webinar that I do on how you can get your first board seat. That's included when you fill in the workbook. And I think you're going to get invited to a live coaching call with myself. So look out for that in your email over the next day or two. If you would like to get a board seat, as Susie said, you know, if you've got a bit of experience, I think our youngest board member is about 24 years old. And we show you not only how to get a board seat, but how to be a great board member, which is the most important piece. All right, Susie already kind of moved or spoke about this, but let's get into reach. So I have a question for everyone in the chat. What do you think is the biggest determinant of success in business? Is it skill or luck? Let me know what you think in the chat before we go on to the next one. Skill or luck? And the hard question is, do you, everyone's hedging now with both. Um, uh, how many of you think that your success up until now is, these are hard questions, how much of your success up until now has been determined by skill or luck? Skill more than luck, both, but the real issue is spotting the links. Very good. Probably luck. Favor skill can bring you luck. Interesting. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Great points. The harder you work, the more skilled you are, and the luckier you get. Yeah, that's a good quote. All right, let's get into reach, because my view on reach is really, I think luck plays a massive role in success. And actually, if you read biographies of successful people, oftentimes they do talk about the role luck played in it. But people tend to think of luck as something random, something outside of their control. One of the things that I kind of focus on is, how do you maximize opportunities for luck to happen? And if you think about the boardrooms that Susie was just talking about, in those boardrooms, deals get done, huge amounts of money get discussed, opportunities for mergers, opportunities for new clients all get discussed. And so those board members are exposed to an opportunity to get lucky. Now potentially that means that they earn equity in deals, or they see where they can make money. And you start to see that you look at successful people and you think, well, they got lucky over and over again. And so my belief is that the more people know you, the more luck can come your way. And so part of that is based on this idea that uh, a lot of us have this idea that we don't have enough something. We'll come to a webinar like this because we want something, and maybe it's that we want a board seat, maybe it's that we want to raise some capital for our company, maybe it's that we want a promotion. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough, all of these things that we don't have enough of. And yet we live in such a ridiculously abundant time that there never has been more money, more knowledge, more skill on the planet. And so how do we put ourselves in a situation, or how do we get ourselves into those rooms where we can take advantage out of that? And so when we were talking about connections, I said, like, the average person only knows about 200 people, and that's because they're not deliberate about building networks. So people you went to school with, your family, people you're at work with, generally it adds up to around 200 people that know you. Those people, so the chances of someone in that 200 having the perfect opportunity for you is very, very remote. There's not a strong chance that they're going to have an opportunity for you. If 2,000 people know you, or 20,000 people know you, or 200,000 people know you, the chances of one of them having a unique opportunity that would be just right for you actually goes up exponentially. And when I talk about Richard Branson and Elon Musk, and I say, well, how do they get so much done so quickly? It's because so many people know them and can go to them with almost fully formed business opportunities. And then they can just say yes or no. It makes life very easy. And you go, well, how lucky is Richard Branson that this opportunity came to him? Well, what he's done is he's manufactured that luck by building his profile. So to me, reach is about increasing your surface area for luck to find you. So Susie was talking about doing podcasts. She was talking about all the work she does on LinkedIn to build her profile. And what it does is it increases the surface area for luck. So when somebody sees that she's sitting on multiple boards and then says, oh, that's the sort of person I need sitting on my board, and they reach out to her, you go, well, that's kind of lucky that she got that. But it's not. It's because she's increased the surface area for that luck to find her. So let's look at how you can do that. There's a great example of someone that has done that incredibly well, is Daniel Priestley. So anyone in the entrepreneurial space will have probably seen Daniel. And if you haven't seen him before, you probably will have seen him in the last year, because he seems to be everywhere at the moment. He's been on Diary of a CEO, I think 5 or 6 times. That is the most the guests they've had on the most. So this was myself and Daniel 20 years ago. That was us a week later, being an entrepreneur agency. And that was us, I think it was 6 months ago or something, in Dubai on a yacht. But Daniel Priestley he's a fantastic entrepreneur, absolutely brilliant. I strongly recommend all of his books and programs. But what's interesting is that he's been very quietly building his businesses, and he's now got 6 or 7 businesses. He's been building them in the background, but it's only really in the last year that his profile has rocketed. And what's happened, and I was chatting to him very recently, what's happened is the level of inbound opportunities that he now gets is off the charts. So he's got he's got multiple people now full time just dealing with all of the inbound speaking requests he gets, podcast requests he gets, business investor opportunities that he gets. It's all inbound now. So it's completely changed from when we were young idiots in Bali trying to strangle each other. So let me take you through a framework that I use and I've used now for about 10 years to help people to increase this surface area for luck. And I really think it's kind of basically social proof. So when people see that you're doing stuff, and then you combine that by the law of large numbers, basically that increases your surface area of luck. So how do you actually do that? One of the things that I noticed, so about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, probably, maybe even longer, I was lucky enough to kind of get some media attention and for some of the businesses that I was building, but I was acutely aware that there were entrepreneurs I knew in my circles that were doing much, much better things than I was, and they weren't getting any media attention. And I remember asking a journalist about it. And I said, like, why do you come to me and you're not coming to those people? And they said, well, basically, if you haven't got media attention already, we're not going to give you media attention. We haven't got time to go through and find out whether you're media worthy. So we look at whether you've got media attention already. So basically, you have to, I use fame in the looser sense of the word, but you kind of have to have established some media presence before the media will look at you. So it's like, Ashen was asking about public speaking or speaking events. You need to be doing speaking events in order to be invited to do speaking events. You need to be interviewed in the media in order to be asked to be interviewed more. So that I came quite conscious of that, and actually you'll see it if you see it right at the top as well. You'll see the same entrepreneurs always being interviewed. They keep getting brought back onto TV shows, and it's just easier for the media to go with people that they know, people that they trust, rather than try and discover new and interesting entrepreneurs. They'll just go for what's easiest for them. And so what we need to do, if we want to build our profile and therefore increase our opportunity for luck, is we need to kind of hack the system. And so what I realized was that there was a systematic way that you can do this. And I've done this now with 2,500 people since I started. But it works really, really well. So it's these 5 things: is the credibility, consistency, cross-platform, connection, and crescendo. And I'll walk through all of them now. So the first thing is credibility. One of the things that if Susie posts on LinkedIn about sitting on the board of a company, she has credibility because she's sitting on multiple boards. If somebody that doesn't sit on the board of a company posts about sitting on the board of a company, they don't have credibility in that area. Now, LinkedIn's great, and we're going to send you, when you're filling in the form, you'll also get access. So you'll get access to a free LinkedIn analyzer tool. But I'm also going to include a 1-hour video I did with Alicia Teltz, who used to be an executive at LinkedIn, and she's now left LinkedIn and set up her own agency and is absolutely smashing it on LinkedIn because she kind of understands what works and what doesn't work. I'll send you that video. I'll tell you, my traffic on my LinkedIn profile has gone up 10 times since that interview, just following the stuff that she told me. So you're going to get that video. I'm going to give that for free. But credibility also comes from having external recognition. So definitely, I think if you're trying to build your reach, you need to be posting on LinkedIn or Twitter, or whatever your platform of choice is. Basically, in this space, in the business space, it is LinkedIn. But if you can get featured in other media, your credibility goes up significantly. Now, what's really interesting is a while ago, Forbes wrote an article on me, and when they published that article, it showed how many views it got. Now, I then took that article and I posted it on LinkedIn and said, thanks to the reporter for doing this feature. My LinkedIn post got 3 times as much traffic as the original Forbes post had got. But the credibility that I got because I'd been published in Forbes versus had I just published the exact same content on LinkedIn, it's that third-party validation. So you want to try and get some third-party validation. The second piece is consistency, and Susie talked about this. One of the things we have is a media package where she gets published every single week. And there is no question, and you'll hear this from everybody that spends any time building their media, is you have to be consistent in your approach. You don't need to publish every single day, but at least like 3 times a week. But it's more important that you're just consistent doing it. I've had a newsletter. My team mock me relentlessly because I've had a newsletter for about 20 years. And I completely forget about it for months at a time. So I'm very inconsistent with my newsletter, which means when I do remember and send a message, lots and lots of people unsubscribe because they suddenly remembered that they were on it. I do need to get much more consistent with it. So this is as much a reminder to me as to you guys, but you want to be consistent in your content. You do want to do cross-platform. So Susie touched on the fact that she not only does LinkedIn, and this media stuff that we do for her, but she also has done podcasts. And it does make a difference and it's kind of weird, like if somebody sees you on LinkedIn and then hears you on a podcast, they assume that you're everywhere. Now, you might have only been on those 2 things, but just because they've heard it on 2 different platforms, it really kind of stands out. So it does, again, it's about building platform. Fourth one is around connections, and we're kind of covered on that, but starting to look at people in the media as connections that you can work with, and rather than just hit them up when you want something, so most journalists get absolutely spammed with press releases and people that want something from them. Think of them instead as connections that you're looking to build a relationship over with. Talk to them about what stories are they looking for. Connect them to other people in your network that might be more appropriate than you, and build relationships over the long term, and then they'll it works much better. Again, it kind of Susie mentioned it, but this idea of focusing on how you can help other people get what they want rather than focusing on what you need. And this is the last one, and this is the one that I think most people get wrong. And so crescendo in music is where it builds up. Another word for it would be amplification. And I remember I had this conversation with the marketing director of Amex Asia, and we were talking about the most successful adverts. And at the time, there was a Dove advert that had done 30 million views on YouTube, and it was the most successful advert of all time. And I was asking him, so what could a young entrepreneur learn from something like that? And he said, well, look, what surprises me about entrepreneurs who are trying to build their profile is that they don't learn from what big companies do. And what he meant was a big company like Amex or like Dove, when they do an advert, they spend 10% of their budget on creating the advert, and they spend the other 90% on promoting the advert. So if you think about that Dove advert, they spent, I think it was $3 million they spent on building on like the actors and the studio and the filming of the advert. And then they spent 27 million on boosting it, and so amplifying it. And so that was buying airtime on channels and buying YouTube ads and following up. So basically, there's this 9-to-1 ratio. And the point he was making is that most of us, if we're doing a post on LinkedIn or a blog post or a short YouTube video, we will spend 100% of our time creating the video, and then we post it, and then we do nothing. Like, we don't promote it in any way. We don't try and reuse that content at all. We don't do any kind of amplification. And so it's a really, really cool tool. And I think it actually kind of goes back to what Marcella was saying about you need to send multiple touch points. So oftentimes when we post something on LinkedIn or a social media platform, we assume that our entire network has seen it. And so we don't want to post it again because we don't want to bore them. It's a bit like Marcella saying, I don't want to send, how many email reminders do I need to send someone to show up to the event? Well, most of us are very, very busy. Most of us aren't really paying attention. We're kind of scrolling like, while we're waiting for something else to happen. And so you can take your content and reuse it multiple times and get a lot more value out of it. So it doesn't need to, learn from the big companies from that. So let me know, do those 5 C's make sense to you in terms of increasing your reach? Let me see if some of the questions. Media cannot find the obscure. Yep. 80% of B2B social media is on LinkedIn. Is that true, or is that, that makes sense. I'm still getting mentions on your podcast bit. That's great. What about Substack? Yeah, quite a few people are talking about Substack. You still have to find the audience. Like, it doesn't, the platforms kind of go up and down. Look, I think trying to get people eventually off a platform and into your email list, whatever you use, Substack or whatever else, definitely makes sense. You want to own them. But like there's always a new platform coming along. So it's just kind of figure out where your audience is. That's the most important thing. What you do find is that, a little bit like progressive partnerships, when you start to build your progress so once you get featured by one media, it becomes much, much easier to get featured by another media. So if I wanted to get featured by Entrepreneur or Inc. Or Forbes again, what I would do is I'd send them my existing articles, my existing features, and say, hey, look, I was already on your piece. We'd have a podcast program helping people get on podcasts. And one of the things you do is you send the podcast host, hey, this was me as a guest on these podcasts. And it just gives you credibility, it gives you authority, and it just makes it easier. And so Dan Priestley talks about this with Diary of a CEO. He has been on hundreds of podcasts over the years that have got like dozens or a few hundred views, very low views. And then he started to get on slightly bigger ones. People like Ali Abdaal had him, and I think he crossed 1 million on Ali Abdaal. And then because he was on that, and then he was on Chris Do, and then the Diary of the CEO saw that he was on those, saw that he was a very good guest, and reached out to him, and then he got onto Diary of a CEO, and he was a very good guest, and so he's been invited back. So it is this upward spiral of value, but you've got to knock the first domino over, which is really key. So one interview leads to other journalists reading about you. I think the other thing is you become better. So a few years ago, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I published lots and lots of interviews with people. And so people said, why don't I start a podcast? Now, the way that I published interviews didn't take a lot of my time, but sitting down and speaking to someone for an hour does take quite a lot of time. And my core business is taking companies public, which is quite time consuming. And so I decided I didn't really have time to build a podcast and build an audience myself. Instead, what I would do is I would spend a year going on as many other people's podcasts as possible and try and build an audience that way. And so I set myself the objective of getting on 20 podcasts in a year. It didn't really matter to me what the podcasts were. Now, interestingly, the last podcast I did in that first year was Entrepreneur on Fire, which at the time was like the #1 podcast for entrepreneurs. But the first 19 were all kind of very small podcasts that nobody knew who they were. But what happened was over those 19 interviews, I got much, much better at articulating my answers and becoming a good podcast host. Not host, sorry, a good podcast guest. And look, I still don't think I'm the best, but you need to kind of go through that practice before you end up on those bigger ones, because you really want to perform when people are seeing you. So definitely start at the bottom, work your way up. Your reach does become self-reinforcing. And because you're updating your LinkedIn profile with every time you do it, that just leads to your authority. You're building new connections. People are hearing you. And I remember somebody was saying to me, they had been on a podcast and they were really disappointed because a week later it still only had 97 listens or 97 downloads. And I said to them, well, look, if I had invited you to go and speak at an event and it had 100 people in the room, would you have gone? He said, yeah, absolutely. And basically, it's the same thing with a podcast. Even if you only had 100 people listen to you, that's 100 people that have got you in their ears while they're driving along and listening to you. It's a very intimate process. So it works very, very well. So don't get too hung up on numbers. So yeah, that's why reach is important, because you can have the connections, you can have the authority, but reach is really where the luck and the opportunities start to come from. Don't leave it to luck, or don't leave it to something outside of your control. Engineer it. And this is a great time to bring us on to the next piece of this. So Dan has been on Diary of a CEO. He's had millions and millions of views. He released a video saying, Diary of a CEO made me $10 million. Now, this brings us really, really nicely onto equity, because the reason that Dan has made $10 million from expanding his reach, getting all this visibility, was that he owns equity in lots and lots of businesses. And so people heard him, they had a way to interact with them. So if you don't earn equity, even if you've gone through this whole journey up until this point, even if you have lots and lots of reach, build lots and lots of visibility, but if you don't own equity, you're not going to have the chance to create the real wealth. So that's what the next section will be. So just let me know. Sorry, I haven't really been paying attention to chat. Let me know in the chat any comments on reach. Let's have a look. What makes a good podcast guest? Other than good manners, yeah, good manners is good. Look, adding value. It's really being clear who their audience is and what can you teach them that will get a good response from their audience. So Dan's excellent at this. Dan has frameworks for everything. So in fact, Paul says excellent frameworks like this provide clarity. So it's a great point. If you're on a podcast, if you can provide a framework for how you deliver the value that you deliver, that makes it very easy for the podcast host because they can clip that. But it also makes it very easy for the audience to hear. So that's the sort of thing. Ashwin says, what is your experience with podcast matching platforms like Podmatch? I'm not familiar with Podmatch. I have a full-time team member now that gets myself and my clients, they just contact podcast hosts all of the time and get them on. But yeah, look, there's a few out there, and definitely I think anything is better than nothing to start with. So yeah, look, again, going back to this idea that I touched on already, which is time is the only genuinely scarce resource. So these things do compound very, very quickly. I know, like, I know our two previous guests were saying that they wish they'd sped things up. But actually, if you objectively look at what they've achieved in under a year, it's incredible. So it might feel slow for you, but it can compound very, very quickly. But you do want, in all of these things, the faster you can compress this time. So if you look at something like board positions, yes, you can wait till you retire and hope that you get a board position then. But what about if you start sitting on boards now, today? How much would you learn? How many earning opportunities would you get because of that? How many new opportunities would come to you? So all of these things about trying to compress time so more cool stuff happens quicker. All right. We do have a media product that I've touched on and Susie mentioned called Easy Media. I will share some information about that in the follow-up email, but basically it's designed to give you all of the 5 components that I just talked about. So we do 2 interviews with you over 6 months that get published in a third-party magazine. One of them is an interview about what you're actually doing, and the other is kind of a behind-the-scenes day in the life of. We also have my booker who will then work to get you on 10 different podcast interviews. You get sent, as Susie mentioned, you get sent a weekly question that you answer in under 100 words. So it'll be things about management, about business, about how you see the world. Those all get published under a third party, but under your name. So Google is seeing you published every single week for 2 years solidly, which is great for building your profile online and a bunch of other stuff. But if you're interested in that, that will get sent to you. All right, I have a question for you before we get into the next section and our next guest. How are we doing for time? Not too bad, not too bad. All right, good. What's my chat saying? What's the experience of podcast, Matt? Yeah, red serendipity. It doesn't happen by accident. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'll look out for that one. Okay, how do you earn equity? Let me know in the chat. How do you think so I just talked about the fact that Dan owns all of these companies, and therefore he was able to leverage that exposure to make lots and lots of money. If you're an employee, if you're not a Daniel Priestley, how do you get equity? Let me know in the chat what you think. Kerry says, I still see your Asian entrepreneur interview with me in 2017 pop up, Callum. Timeless. Thank you. Yeah, very cool. All right. Buy or sweat or connections. Yeah, very good. By helping startups at an equity only basis. Yeah, very good. They see value in you. Advisor to startups get equity. Good point, Dan. Advisory roles. Yeah. All right, cool. So look, what I want to talk about is most people tend to assume that the way to get equity is through starting a business or buying equity. So anyone can go into the market and buy Apple stock or Facebook stock. But or you can go and start a company, which we know is very hard. The key thing is you need to kind of strategize a way to add equity to your asset portfolio. The more equity you have, ultimately, the more likely you are to succeed and get wealthy from it. All of the wealthiest people, they didn't get rich from salaries, they get rich from equity. Now, I know there's a few exceptions in the AI world right now, people getting offered crazy, crazy salaries. But even those, a lot of the time, most of the salary is actually being made up with equity rather than just typical salary. So salaries do have ceilings. Equity has no limits, but it is volatile, and volatile means it can go up or go down. But yeah, fundamentally, the majority of wealthy people have made their wealth through owning equity. And yeah, most people think that you have to start something or invest money. What I want to do now is show you a third way that is working for quite a lot of people. And it's something that we've already kind of touched on, but it's formalizing it a bit. So every company that you meet, so if you're out there building connections and sitting on boards and doing podcasts, you're going to come across more and more companies. So businesses need customers, they need capital, and they need talent. And if you can be somebody that systematically connects business, and I know we've got a few people on this call who do that, they've become introducers, then companies will pay, because companies pay for leads, companies pay for introductions. And when it comes to capital raising, companies will often give equity, because when they're trying to raise money for so when they're trying to raise money, basically what they're saying is, okay, we will sell some stock for an investment of capital. If you're the person that introduces the capital to the company, then you will often get not only cash for doing that, but also some equity in the company. And so if you're somebody that can keep connecting people, you will very rapidly start to build up a portfolio of equity, and it can be super, super lucrative as well. So I say professional introducers earn equity without starting companies or investing capital, and you don't need to be a professional introducer. There are ways that anyone can get started doing this, and that's kind of what I built Guild for. So in the new economy, the most valuable skill is knowing who knows what and engineering those connections systematically. So you remember right at the beginning, we asked that question about quality or quantity. And one of the things I was saying is that it actually makes sense to have diversity in your network, because when you start thinking entrepreneurially and you start thinking about connecting people in your network, then actually you want as many people from different backgrounds. So hey, put these people together and these people together, and they can do that. Now, my belief is that the whole career path is shifting away from the kind of traditional job set that we currently have to much more what Hollywood has been doing for the last 100 years. So what Hollywood does is it brings a group of people together for a project. It tries to get the best directors, the best actors, the best screenplay, all of those people that happen to be available at that time, because they end up with who's available rather than who's necessarily the best. But they will pull them together and they'll work on that project. And when that project is finished, they'll disband. And what happens is you find people saying, I only want to work with this person in the future because I really enjoyed working with them. And the value of your personal, your authority becomes super, super important, and also being really well connected. And so I think more and more companies are doing that. Certainly in my business and a lot of small businesses, that's how we operate. We bring people in to work on projects, and then they disband and work on other projects. And when you start to think like that, you start to collect people in your network that you know will be helpful to other people in your network. Our next speaker is going to show you amazingly how he's done this. He's taken the ideas that I shared and has outperformed incredibly. And so it's a great example of this, even and going from complete outsider to becoming an insider. Now, this is about being very strategic. So again, this kind of idea about connections, but understanding where those companies are. So a big company like Apple is not going to give you equity if you introduce them to a new client. A small company is very open to doing anything to get new clients, new investors, and there's lots and lots of opportunities. So one of the questions that we had when Susie was talking about how many of her positions are paid board positions, at the Veblen Director Program, we have this first priority is getting people board seats. The second priority is what we call learn to earn. which is understanding all the different ways that you can monetize a board seat once you're on it. And actually, a salary is about the least interesting thing, the way that you can earn money. There's lots of other ways. So the whole idea is to start thinking about opportunities in a different way and start asking, would there be an opportunity if I was to help this company reach their goals? Would there be an opportunity for me to earn equity in that? And you'll be surprised how many are willing to give things away. So when I was going through this process, I had been trying to raise capital for many years for lots and lots of different projects. And what I'd realized was that raising capital is normally a real slog. I found that most of the advice that they give you about raising capital is actually very bad. And that actually it was quite easy to raise money when somebody already knows and trusts you. And so what I did was I reverse engineered, how do you raise capital? How do people actually raise capital, rather than the advice people give entrepreneurs, and work backwards from that. So I built the guild community. What I've done is, this is a paid community, but I've actually taken the paywall down. So anyone that's watching this, you will have a link to this in your form, and you can go along, learn this. Is all the content about how you can become an introducer, how you can connect capital to companies that want capital and take equity in it, and earn from that. So we have another 5C model that you can work your way through. It's a really, really cool community as well. People very, very keen on helping you. And one of our standout stars of the guild community is Benjamin Ulrich. So Benjamin, are you there? Just while I share the story. So Benjamin, I think first started stalking me on LinkedIn. So I remember Benjamin leaving a couple of comments on one of my posts, probably about this time last year. And yeah, we got connected, got chatting. I had just launched Guild to help people learn how to raise capital and how to build networks. And Benjamin was a very attentive student. I do remember one webinar I did. Benjamin was sitting in his bathroom in the dark at like 3 o'clock in the morning, so he didn't wake up his kids to attend my webinar, which was super impressive. Stood out a lot, and what he has achieved in the last 12 months is absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this presentation. We will get Benjamin and our next speaker, Paul, on a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions for Benjamin, stick them in the chat. And with that, I will hand over to you. I think you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute, Benjamin. Can one of the team take him off mute?
Is it working now?
Now it's working.
Okay,
Perfect.
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. A big thanks to Callum, because I wouldn't be here without Guild, without the content that you've set up. So everything I'm going to be sharing with you today is a combination between my personality, my background, and what I've learned from Guild, and running with it, applying the concepts, and I want to encourage all of you, you can do it. So let's jump in with the first slide. And I have to disappoint you a little bit. A sour pill to begin with. This is an 18-month journey through the desert. It is not possible to make quick money with this. You have to be willing to invest in the beginning, and I will show you what I did, and I will show you some results, but just so we're kind of setting the tone for our conversation today. I was very happy that someone who has a large family office community told me this, and I have it on my phone, a reminder every Sunday that July 2026 will be the day where those 18 months have passed. So this is a mental hack for me to stay on course. We can move to the next slide. Wonderful. This is the last sour pill I'm going to serve to you for today, but I thought about what might stop most of us when trying to build an investor network. And it is, in fact, we have to think about what is in it for them. And we're going to get to that very, very soon. Just so you're prepared, you got to flip the script in your head. And it might be a little bit painful. It's very counterintuitive. But I promise you, when we get to the bottom of this, you will feel equipped of going out and building your investor network. We can move to the next slide, please, where we're going to look at the first of two axioms that we need to get right. This is a quote that I adapted from Ronald Diamond. Callum interviewed Ronald. It's in the Guild community, the video. I urge you to go and watch it. The best thing you can do for an investor is to introduce them to another investor. What we're going to see is introductions are the hardest currencies you ever will have. And any one of you can make introductions, introducing one person to another, so you're going to be fine. We'll come back to this, but let's move to the next slide, where we have an even more counterintuitive second axiom, which to all the founders here, to all the CEOs in this call, to maybe some of the board members in this call, and for all the professionals who are listening, this will be counterintuitive. Find out what the investor wants, then find it for them. You might be screaming, or something in your mind might be screaming, but hey, hold on. I want to raise capital for my startup, for my fund, for my hedge fund, for my company. Why would I care about what the investor wants? I should care about what I want, right? And that is a sales approach, but you gotta flip the script. You gotta come from the point of view of the investor. And we're gonna look at how we're gonna do that. But this is the mental sort of framework we're gonna work with. Let me show you a little bit of what I've achieved over the last year, I would say, and we're going to see what it took to get there. But right now, I'm in the fortunate position to know what some of the high net worth individuals and family offices, single or multi, are looking for. And so I can go and source these deals for them, creating that position where I can sit in the middle and become this trusted introducer. I also make introductions with single family offices. I've chosen single family offices because I vibe with the long-term perspective. You might be more into VC funding or private equity funding, or you might be more into an asset class like real estate. It doesn't matter. The principles apply. I consider myself buy side only, but every now and then, of course, I see a lot of deal flow where companies are trying to raise money, and that I consider is the sell side. So you have to be really aware on which side you're sitting, because when you reach out to investors, especially the highest possible investor class of family offices, they're going to test you to find out, are you trying to push a product their way, or are you actually caring about their interest? We can move to the next slide. Yeah, I didn't want to make this sound like a super a success story only. 2 weeks after having reached out to a super successful investor, his average ticket size is like 20 million. I tried to do my best, but I didn't know better. and I wanted to propose to him SpaceX shares, which just showed how absolutely ignorant I was of the entire system. And it was like a couple months into my journey. I was still climbing Mount Everest. I was kind of like getting ready in the base camp, trying to find my oxygen mask. And I would throw this at a pioneer who's gone to Mount Everest top like X amount of times. And it just positioned me in a poor spot, and he would not answer my messages ever again. So I want to show you that there's a learning curve. You might mess up in the beginning, but if it's done in good faith, I can come back to him presenting a really good deal now that I've learned everything, and then you can kind of rebuild that rapport. Let's go to the next slide. That was a question someone asked me before. Well, what's the timeline on this? And about every month, I have, depending, 20, 30 calls. I do this part-time. So before I go to my day job or over lunch or in the evening on the weekends, I try to crank out a few calls. And as you will see, I make a lot of introductions. That is gold. We're going to come to that. I hosted my own events. I've gone through the same program as Marcella did, and it's really powerful. It's scary to do it for the first time, but if you have a cohort, if you have a community, it really helps. And you know what else helps? If you build your own personal board of advisors. So I kind of flipped the Veblen idea on its head, and I decided, well, I need to get myself my personal board of advisors. So I've been reaching out to people who are advanced, more successful, more senior, and I ask them, would you join me on my mission, and would you be helpful to me? And people are so generous with their time, their experience. They send me, they introduce me to people, and then you can snowball things from, just building a few Lego blocks at a time to creating something bigger, and then you can show it and you can leverage what you've done to get to the next stage. We're going to come to that now. So Daniel Priestley said, spend 1/3 with people who are senior to you, spend 1/3 with people who are your peers, so you can have the same eye-level conversation, and then spend 1/3 of your time helping those who are coming behind you. And I think that distribution not only keeps you grounded, but it also is very fulfilling. It goes back to what Susie said about your why. You got to know why you're doing this. And you will get opportunities as well from the people you're helping. So it's probably very smart to do that as well. Just copy paste. The playbook that I'm using consists of the Get Launched program as the idea of bringing people together. We're going to host a family office roundtable with senior wealth advisors in Switzerland. That actually is just the consequence of me hosting my own events, meeting my future partners, speaking to the vision, and now together we are creating something really big and something really meaningful for the Swiss and later hopefully for the European ecosystem of helping families of wealth having the difficult conversations about the soft topics, right? I'm a very big fan of progressive partnerships. That's part of what I use in Guild. Let your existing relationships create your new relationships. And that's how I've gone from an outsider to literally this weekend I've been in the office of a single family office, and we really agree on the mechanics of how I can be useful in the ecosystem. And then, as I said, use the Veblen methodology and the framework, how to think about building your own board of advisors. I think that's what a lot of people kind of get hung up on. By sharing, we feel that we lose something, but it's quite the contrary. If we hold on to something, it kind of limits us. But if we let it go and if we share, we become the richest person in the world. And so if you can share connections, if you can share introductions, if you can share information, If you can share events, entertainment, goes back to the ICE model, you become a leader. And that's what it's, at the end of the day, you gotta kind of change from being a recipient and a consumer to becoming a producer, becoming a leader, becoming a thought leader. And you have people like Daniel Priestley, like Callum, like Marcella, we're going to hear Paul. You have this community, and then you just go out and you cannot fall back because we got you covered, right? We can move to the next slide. Susie has mentioned some of this before, so I only want to mention a little bit. Like, I do most of my outreach on LinkedIn, and I start with comments. I sometimes would comment the comment of someone. Sometimes you can pick people who are commenting on someone's post. So you got to go to the second order or the third order, and then you can create these little pockets of intimate conversations, close personal conversations, and just be caring, care about the people. We're going to see that. Your ultimate goal is to set up a virtual call, have a physical meeting, and in the case you really try to dare and create your own events, start pulling 2 or 3 people together online over lunch. It doesn't hurt. Let the people speak. People want to meet other people. They don't want to meet you. They want to meet the people you know. So bring people together and just let them talk. It takes out all the anxiety, all the fear. You don't have to be scared. Just be a platform for people to meet. And we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. You got to stand shoulder to shoulder with the investor. Don't come at it from being confrontational and like, hey, I got this right product and everything. Investment is a profession, and you gotta honor the professionalism of the people you're talking to. Ronald Diamond said it. I never, ever, under no circumstances, pitch to an investor in the first call. Spend time, get to know them, learn about what they're prioritizing, bring value to them first by means of introductions, information, and by introducing your network. It works wonders, and it reduces the barriers of entry. It reduces hostility. It reduces the guarding that naturally goes up, because every investor knows you want money. So you got to have a different story if you want to be their partner and not kind of like they guarding against you. You got to completely come from a different mindset. We can move to the next slide. So given the time, let me just see. You got to design a conversation framework and be listening, get your tone right, and be vulnerable. And I'd like to jump to the last slide, please. One more. The bigger picture of it all is this is an infinity game. Relationships is an infinity game. Play to stay in the game. Don't play not to lose. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'll be looking forward to meeting you on LinkedIn. Please write Guild or Callum or Inner Circle, so I don't let everybody in. Signal that you're a friend.
That was awesome, Benjamin. And as I mentioned in the chat, it's been such a pleasure watching you over the past year. And a couple of things really stood out. There's a huge amount of attention being paid to your lack of moustache by many in the audience. But what's interesting is I remember you and I discussing this, and when we were talking about connections, and we were talking about at the beginning of this presentation, and I was talking about building your way up, you decided to build a network with some of the most sought after people in the world. Like, yeah, family offices in Switzerland there's so many people are trying to get to them, and you decided that you were going to start straight at the top. And I do remember saying to you, well, yeah, it could be easier to start with angel investors or VCs or people trying to sell to family offices, but no, you decided to aim for the top. And we had this conversation about, well, look, it's not you that they want to meet, it's other people like them, and you've been incredibly good at doing that and connecting people and building it. But just looking at the feedback in the chat, the amount of people that know you and have got to know you over the last year, I actually think that situation has shifted. I think people would now come to events because they want to meet you. You've done such a good job of putting yourself into the center of this, and it's great. You've been sending me emails with like the AUM of your events and people inviting you to sit on their boards, and yeah, you are a fantastic example of somebody that has literally gone from outsider to insider in less than a year by playing this game absolutely brilliantly. So I'm going to get Benjamin back on in a minute or in about 10 minutes with our other speaker. So if you have any questions for Benjamin, do chuck them into the chat. But yeah, absolutely great presentation, and it's been a real pleasure watching what he's created. And I think it's, with everybody that you've seen speak so far, I think all of them have done it. Well, yeah, all of them have done it in less than a year. They've gone from being an outsider to being an insider. Oh, there we go. And so I think, if you're thinking, what am I going to do with my 2026, since we're coming up to the end of the year, I mean, don't wait until then to get started. But it is incredible what you can achieve when you have the right frameworks and you have the right motivation and actually kind of put the effort in, as Benjamin has done. So yeah, as you heard, Benjamin runs regular events now for some of the wealthiest people in Switzerland. That has made him so in demand because people want to get to those families. They will come through. They've got to go through Benjamin because he's running that network. So he learned the systematic relationship approach, and I think part of what makes this work is Benjamin has really focused on how do I add value for those family offices. And he knew right from the start that if he could help connect them to other family offices, that was value. And he had nothing to sell them. And I think that's really important because when you get to any level of success, people always want something from you. I was lucky enough to spend a week on Necker Island with Richard Branson. And I noticed that every single person that it was in that group, and there was about 20 or 30 of us, you see them pluck up their courage and then go and try and corner Richard Branson and pitch him on their latest idea or their latest startup or their latest business. And you'd see Richard Branson glaze over, nod and smile, and then back nervously away and try and get out of the conversation. So the more successful you are, the more people want things from you. So if you come at it from a very different approach of not, hey, I want something from you, but hey, how can I help you get what you want? It's very refreshing, and it's a surprisingly easy shortcut to fast track things. All right, let's press on because I want to finish up on equity and then move on to service. Before I do that, let me know in the chat whether you feel like you're getting value from today so far, whether it's giving you some ideas, some inspiration. What we are going to do is a lot of this stuff is actually really good fun to work on in person. So Benjamin said it, like it's great to have a cohort that you can run with. So we're going to run a one-day event. It's going to be in London in March, on March the 7th. If you would like to be at it, it's going to be one day. It's going to go through the five-letter framework that we've gone through, but it's going to be super interactive. And the idea is to really get you started and get you, get you those connections, get you the authority, get you the reach, the equity, and the service all in one day. So if you are interested in that, we're going to put a link in the chat if we haven't already. There's a very special offer. So it's a special price today. It's going to be $499 for everyone else. If you book it today, it's going to be $199. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to throw in the $3,500 Get Launched program that both Benjamin and Marcella were on. So you're going to get that for free. That has all of the content that you need to launch your own networking event. So you're going to get all of that for $199. If you can't do that for whatever reason, after tomorrow, the early bird until the end of the year will be $299. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that. Well, generally I don't look forward to going to London, but I am looking forward to that event because I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And I'm going to try and drag in some of our speakers as well to be present at that as well. All right, let's press on. Look, I just kind of wanted to, I'm going to skip over this very, very quickly, but I thought it was useful to see a little bit about the other side of the equation. So my core business, my day job is Unity Group, and that's taking companies public. And I actually just checked with our CFO today because we're one of those companies that works with introducers. So people bring companies to us, people bring investors to us, and we give away equity to those introducers, and we give away cash. And I checked with our CFO today. So far this year, so far in 2025, we have paid out $790,000 to introducers that have brought deals to Unity Group in cash. That's not including the equity piece. I don't even know what the equity piece is, but it'll be several million. So there are, and look, we're just one of many. But what we have done to make ourselves successful is kind of what you see Benjamin doing and what you see our other speakers doing, is they're building an ecosystem around themselves, which makes it very easy for them to focus on what they do well and then have other people sort of feed into that ecosystem. So these are the three things that ecosystems give you. And it's just an interesting way to think about, okay, if I'm going to be building these connections, my authority, my reach, if I think about designing an ecosystem again, like in 3 years' time, what do I want in that ecosystem? So I think having an ecosystem gives you these three things: amplification, scale, and resilience. So I'm just going to run through these very quickly. You will get recordings of this video. You're not going to get the slides, but you'll get the recordings, so you can slow this down and watch it later. So let's have a look at amplification. I've kind of already talked about the power of amplification in media. I do think the more that you build connections and position yourself as the center of a connection, the more opportunities come to you. Get Launched is obviously a great program for that. Unity Group is a combination of myself and Jeremy Harbour is my partner. So he owns the Harbour Club, which is an M&A program. I own things like Veblen Direct program, Guild, Get Launched, Enterprise Zone. But you don't need to own everything. We also work with stock exchanges. We work with accountant firms and auditors. And so we have trusted partners within our network. And what happens is, the more you build that, the quicker stuff happens, because you're not going out trying to learn stuff from scratch. You just know that you can pass people to people in your network that you trust, and stuff gets done quicker. So don't think you have to be an entrepreneur. Don't think you have to own everything, but do focus on it. The other thing that I would strongly encourage is shouting about your wins. And this is something that for most of us kind of feels very uncomfortable to do. I know LinkedIn is full of people that sort of do the humble brag, but actually, it's really, really useful. In Veblen, we talk about sharing little wins. So even the smallest wins, when you publish them, when you share your wins with your network, what it does is it shows you as someone that's doing stuff, that's being successful, but it also lets them know what you consider a win. And when they know what you consider a win, it becomes much easier for them to pass opportunities to you that might be valuable to you. So on the right, you might not be able to see this, but this is Susie posting about yet another board seat that she had landed on. And yeah, she had 111 comments, 160 interactions with that post. So oftentimes when you do these posts about your wins, they get the most attraction. And then people in your network and people 2 degrees apart see that that's something that you're doing, and a lot of opportunities come to you from that. So don't be afraid to shout about your wins. It's really, really valuable. Scale through specialization. So it's tempting to think when you get into this, especially if you're thinking about doing introductions, is okay, I can potentially work with this guy over here who's a Bitcoin miner, and I can help him raise some capital, and I can do this with this startup over here and this hedge fund over here. That's fine, but you need to be known for something. When we talked about the authority piece and the reach piece, people have to understand what you are. Now, Benjamin has positioned himself as the family office guy in Switzerland, and that's an incredibly valuable positioning. You saw that Susie was doing eco stuff, sitting on boards, and that's where she's focused on. Marcella is the impact investing person in London. These are all super, super valuable. So, but you want to be known for a specialization. Don't get too far outside of that. Work with partners who sit outside of that. And that's the ecosystem that you want to be in. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're going to meet lots and lots of people. And the more you raise your profile, the more opportunities are going to come to you. And we talked about this with Marcella. She gets to these opportunities. Some of them are right for her. Others she'll just pass into her network. The more she passes them into her network, the more opportunities come to her because more people want to be in her network, and it sort of spirals up. But people will come to you wanting different things. And so if you can push them to friends, colleagues, partners, sister companies, it makes it very easy for you to monetize. And that's what Dan Priestley has been able to do so well, because he's got an ecosystem of businesses. So if I look at Unity Group, some people come to us wanting to learn, and therefore they get pushed into Veblen Direct Program or Harbor Club. Some people want to do deals, we push them into Guild. Some people want to raise money, push them into Guild. Some people want to buy a company, goes straight to Unity Group. Take a company public, it's Unity Group. So whatever people are coming into us, we want to be able to direct them in the right direction. So if you think about who are your target prospects and what do they want? So for Benjamin, his target prospects are family offices in Switzerland. What do they want? He identified very early that they want to meet other people like him, not like him, sorry, like them. And how can you help them get it? The more you can help them, the more people will come to you. Trust comes through actions, not words. Yeah, at the beginning of the year, if Benjamin had said, I'm going to be the most connected person to family officers in Switzerland, nobody would have believed him. Now everybody believes him because he's taken the action, he's delivered. So you really want to get a reputation. And I think it came up earlier when we were talking about authority. Somebody said, be someone who delivers on your words. So yeah, start small. I think, yeah, start small, one bite at a time is how you eat an elephant. Okay, and the final one is resilience, and it's kind of a sort of ends on a little bit of a negative note, but look, the reality is we live in super turbulent times. There's a lot of stuff going on. And what's up one day can be down the other day. Business has seasons. Nothing works forever. I'm constantly reminded of this when our next guest is somebody that when he was living in Singapore, I would make every effort to take him out for lunch on a regular basis and learn from him. But we used to lament the fact that we would get something working and then it would work great for 3 months or 6 months, and then it would stop working. So the more options that you have, the more peace of mind that you have. And so resilience is that. All right. So look, diversification is not just about adding stuff. It needs to make sense. So for Benjamin, it's about the family offices. If he adds family offices in different cities, that makes sense. If he suddenly starts doing tech startups or something, it doesn't make sense. But the more you do this, the more you build this very, very powerful moat. All right, let's get into final question for you to think about. When is the right time to look at helping others? And I think you'll probably know the answer to this, given all, given all of our guests have led into it, and Dan Schwartz, I'm guessing, has got it spot on with now, as is Marco. All right, so let's just, before I bring in our next speaker, let's talk about this idea of service. And this is really kind of, I think a lot of people do have this backwards. They sort of think when they get successful, they will then look to give more. And actually, it's not that way. It's actually the more people you help now, the more successful you will be. And so there's a lot of narrative at the moment about yeah, taxing the wealth and wealth are evil and some of this sort of stuff. But successful people generally aren't successful because they're selfish. That doesn't generally work. They need that they're all people that serve more people. And the leaders that you admire get there by solving problems for others. Everyone that you've heard speak today is solving a problem for others, whether it's a networking event, whether it's companies looking for their boards, whether it's family offices. So service isn't what you do after it's service, how you get successful. So start thinking now, how can you serve more people? If you serve 10 people well, you'll get 10 people's worth of opportunities. If you serve 10,000 people, you get significantly more opportunities, and it just compounds returns through reputation. And then there's so it's not just about the people you serve. I also want to touch a little bit on kind of philanthropy and why do successful people end up giving so much of their wealth away. For all the criticisms around the top 10% or top 1% of people in society, the top 10% in society contribute about 60 to 70% of all giving to charities and philanthropy. And I love this quote by Winston Churchill: "We make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give." And every single successful entrepreneur I've ever worked with always ends up making a big part of what they do giving back. And a lot of them have foundations as a way. So if you think of some of the sort of business titans from hundreds of years ago, they're still having an impact today because of foundations that they have. Now, a foundation is a legal entity created to manage charitable giving. This has always been a very expensive thing to do, and one of the things that I've been exploring with our next guest over the past 6 months or so is how we can allow everyone on this call to create your own foundation, but instead of the normal costs, and oftentimes it can cost about $75,000 to set up a foundation, cost about $50,000 a year to run, which means unless you're planning on donating really big amounts of money, it doesn't make sense. But I've been working with Paul to look at how we can do this for just a few $1,000s a year, let you have a foundation, which means that if there's a cause that you're interested in, whether it's education, health, poverty alleviation, any of these, when you're organizing a networking event, when you are putting a deal together, you can say a percentage of every deal goes to my foundation. And that foundation might be in the name of your parents, it might be in the name of your children, might be in your own name. But it, again, in terms of authority, in terms of reach, these are all great things. And of course, it's super, super rewarding to do. So there's going to be, and we haven't got that product ready yet, but I'm hoping to launch it next year. In the resources that we send you, there will be a tick box if you would be interested in that next year. I think it's really, really cool. I'm really looking forward to it. But what I'm looking forward to even more is our next guest. So I am going to bring Paul Dunn on. That photo of me strangling Daniel Priestley 20 years ago or something was about the time when sorry, can we get, yeah, about the time that I met Paul. So about 20 years ago, I met Paul. And it has been an honor and a privilege to have him as a mentor and close friend over the years. I have learnt insane amounts from this young man. And it's such a joy to have him on. You're very lucky to hear from him. So with that, I will hand over to Paul on the topic of service.
Oh, Callum, thank you. And what a joy it has been. I've been here for the last hour or so, enjoying so much and learning so much. Really so good to hear all these things going down. And we're going to build on some of that in the next 15 minutes or so. By the way, if I just share my screen really, really quickly, one of the things we are going to be doing is we are going to be going very, very, very fast, very fast. And so it's going to be, let me just get my screen ready there. There you go. It's going to be kind of important for you to grab your phones. Do make sure you've got your phones, wave them, all of that kind of stuff, because you really are going to need them. Thank you, Rochelle. Okay, and Kerry, great to see you as well. So I'm going to presume you're getting your phones out. Now, throughout the day, we've been looking at all of these wonderful things in the CARES framework, and why I'm so privileged to be here is every single one of these things, whether we're looking at connections, by the way, Benjamin, lovely to hear what you're doing, whether it's in authority, whether it's in reach, whether it's in equity, and Callum, that was a great session on that, or whether it's in service. Everything we're going to be talking about now has undergone really, really significant changes. Callum talked about some of those as we could ever imagine. The reality is this: there has never, ever, ever been a time like this. And what I want to do is kind of position what we're talking about here within that framework. So let's have a look at some things, if you like, in the noise. Let's have a look. I still like to call it Twitter, but we might call it X. Look at the noise. 6,000 per second, 360,000 per minute. And if you multiply that up, that's 500 million a day coming at you in that particular thing. Look over here at email, and I know you get half of them and I get the other half. I know that per second, right? Look at this, 374 billion every single day. And then if you look at businesses being formed, this one is really interesting, actually. 175 per minute, or 250,000 per day. There has never been a time like this. And of course, we used to go searching on Google, 40,000 searches of those per second, leading to 3.5 billion per day. But interesting enough, in the last 6 months, rather, that has gone down 55%. So that's why you need to keep close with people like Callum to keep on top of all this stuff. And where are people searching now? Well, a lot of it, of course, is going just on GPT, on ChatGPT. This is just ChatGPT's numbers, not all the others. 28,000 searches per second, 2.5 billion per day going on right there. And by the way, interestingly enough, we've been communicating on the team on WhatsApp, and I thought I might have a look at what's happening there. So look at that, 1.16 billion per second, and what's that? Sorry, billion, and 100 billion. I think there could even be a T in that one per day. And of course, if you look at this one, let's look at this as the sort of poster child of everything that's been happening in the past couple of years. Then, as you know, a couple of Novembers ago, it launched. Look at that launch thing. And now 800 million per week. By the way, last 2 weeks, that went up to to a billion. Why? Because the US schools came back, and so up went the usage. And there is so much great stuff now. And this is why it's important to be around people like Callum. There's so much great stuff and opportunity now, and they're all following this exponential line, which they never did. So let's look at some of the great things that are happening. Health and longevity, gene therapy, network knowledge, more entrepreneurs, digital currencies, all of that kind of stuff is happening with this exponential growth thing, which we should be very, very excited about. But there's something else going on as well, and that's another curve. But this curve is going the other way. And what have we got? Extreme weather, all of these sorts of things. You can see it, the weaponization of tech and so on and so forth. And by the way, when you read the work of some of the people involved with this, they will tell you that no, these two lines cannot exist. One is going to outdo the other, and we need to make sure it's that one right here. We need to go the other way. So with that in mind, I hope this is all making sense. What might we do? What might we do now that we've been confronted with all of the stuff? They're not confronted, but all of the stuff that Callum and the guys have been going through, and then you lay this on top of it. What does that mean? What should you and I do in this moment? And Ben, I loved what you were saying. Because it's copybook, right? This is exactly so. We need to move from me moments, right? All about me. No, listen again to Benjamin. We need to move from me moments to we moments. That's what we need. It's not about inputs, it's about the outcomes. And we need to remember this. This is a quote from Joseph Pine, who wrote The Experience Economy. His new book coming out in February is called The Transformation Economy. And have a look at what he said. He said, the only purpose, I really want you to write that down or take a photograph of it, because that's the game changers right there. The only purpose of a great business, of a great introduction, of all of those things that you're doing, is to foster humanity flourishing. Put a D in the chat for me if you get that. That's pretty deep, right? So go for it if you would. So let's build on that. You're right, Francie, it is. And what we're going to do is help you move into that in a very different way right across these things. So what's happening is that there's so much standard stuff out of there. AI has kind of made this all standard in some ways. Dan Priestley said the other day, one interesting thing about the technology that's coming on is AI has now made your competitors easier to copy you. So we need to move from this standard to stand out and get right out of the sea of sameness. By the way, Seth Godin, and I guess many of us are subscribing to Seth. If you're not, then you should be. Seth Godin put it this way. It's an obvious statement, but take a look at it. In a busy marketplace, not standing out is the same as being invisible. That's why we need this kind of network that's going on here in Veblen and Guild and so on. And then how do you do that? And this is the key. We're going to do it by inviting you to stand for something bigger than yourself. Why? Because it's not about you. Think about it not as reaching out the whole time, but as building a bigger magnet to which people are attracted because of the great things that you're doing. And what we're going to do is have a look at that in a very different way. We're going to start using something called B1G1. We'll talk more about what that stands for. There you go. Looking at the power of small. Thank you, Pam, for that lovely note. The power of small. Notice that. In other words, what we're saying, and Benjamin and all the people that are talking said exactly the same thing. Why wait to do something huge when you can do something small today? And particularly when those small things make a difference. And I want to talk with you about one of those moments. And by the way, all of us on the team here are very, very hopeful that, yes, I'm talking about a life-changing moment, but all of us are trying to bring life-changing moments to you as well. I really, really hope that you get all of the things that are going down here, so you'll look back on this and say, whoa, this is the thing that changed my life. This one happened in 2006, and many of you in the call were in the room actually when it happened, and that is when I met this wonderful lady here. I was mentoring her. She had this little tiny food business, and if ever there was an example of someone who gets it the right way, thinking about the others, this would be her. And what she did in this mentoring session, she decided to change things up. She asked if, instead of me being the person who asks the questions as the mentor, she could actually ask questions. I want you to take a look at the question she asked me. It was just one brilliant, game-changing question. And again, go back on what Benjamin was talking about, and you'll see the same thing. What if, let me blow this up, it's so important. What if every time business was done, something great happened in our world? Think about that, if you would. What if every time business was done, something great happened in our world? And you might say, well, how on earth could you do that? And would that help you stand out because you're standing for? Of course it would. Well, let's have a quick look at what it looks like. If that was the case, then you could actually say, and we're going to show you some people that say this, every time we work together, something special happens. You could say that. And you could say, for example, every time we send an email, a child in need gets access to an e-learning program that changes their life. Just consider what you're seeing on the screen right now, and just consider putting that into action. Or you could say, whenever we complete a project, 18 homeless, all these things you're seeing on the right-hand side are part of 480 projects, vetted projects, by the way, that are part of the whole B1G1 network. Whenever we have a great meeting, by the way, just because you're here tonight on Zoom with me, six times however many people are here, are getting access to game-changing education just because we are on Zoom. So we help a farmer run their beekeeping business for an entire year, as a for example. Or you might say this: every time someone attends one of our workshops, the kind of workshop that Benjamin was talking about before. How about this? 57 people get access to pure life, or kids access to pure life-saving water. Would that change what happens in that reaction? And the answer is, of course it would. So what's actually happening is we're moving to suggesting, not waiting forever, but saying, when this tiny thing happens, something great happens over here. And you're in total control of that. And there's a brilliant transition going on. So again, you get to this one here. You get to the standard to stand out because you stand for something bigger than yourself. And what's very important in all of the things you've heard before, it's not saying, oh, we gave $1,000 to someone or something like that. What's actually happening is you are creating impacts, very specific impacts. And when you create those impacts, and by the way, in B1G1, when we started this in 2006, I could never have imagined that I would be talking with you right now, and together with the movement that is B1G1, some 385 million impacts now on the board. And it's measurable. This is why we measure, why we do impacts. It's trackable, it's inspirational. When this happens, and it's connecting. Let me give you a simple little look at that. And because you become a business for good. By the way, what I'm going to do, please cross your fingers for me. Wherever you are, cross your fingers, cross them, because I'm going to do something that everybody says, you should never do this. Okay, let me show you what it looks like. So here is a B1G1 member. This is a guy in New York. His name is Brody Lee. He runs, you can see he's actually changed the name of his business. It's called Beyond Impact. What he does is he trains people in doing great big events. And this is his impact page. You can see it's called Our Impact. This could be yours. Just imagine what happens. What if every time we do business, something good happens in the world? And this is live, by the way. Then you scroll down. There's a very important thing here. Our mission. Now, that sounds like a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? By 2050, we're going to help our clients do this. By the way, until 3 months ago, that said by 2030. Right? But he had already achieved that by doing this. So now he just upped it a couple of months ago. By 2050, we're going to help our clients do this. The most important words on that screen there right now are these: so that we can. So that, in other words, why are we doing this? What's the why that's bigger than ourselves? And so we scroll down. This is what we're going to do. Look at that. And by the way, he's tracking all of these things. We're going to give 1 billion meals. We're going to provide 10 million years. Whoops, you don't see all of that. Where did that come in from? Just a second. There we go. 10 million years of clean water, 10 million trees. And look at this. We're going to save 100,000 children, I beg your pardon, from sex trafficking. How cool is that? If you think that's cool, by the way, put the word cool in the chat. And let me know that this is making some kind of sense for you. And by the way, as we scroll down here a little bit, why are we doing that? Well, he says, because what we do says who we are. Notice that, not what we say, but what we do. And of course, I told you it's tracking. There it is. That's his impacts, not all of B1G1, just his impacts automatically tracked across the global goals. And how about this? We track every single one of them. And by the way, these impacts are costing cents for people to make. And so if I go and click on one of them over here, we'll see what that was. Okay, you can see there's 1,354 days of hygiene support. We can click on all of these and create really, really interesting stuff. Now, there's many more of these that I could share with you, but what I'm going to do, oh, there's the great one that I could have shared. But anyway, don't worry. We'll go back over here and we'll come back to that perhaps in a later moment. But if you would put in the chat something like a Y to let me know that this is making sense, just pop a Y in the chat. I can read all the chats, so let me know. So let's have a look at some key metrics. One of the things Callum teaches me is that metrics are really, really important. So let's have a look at some. And this is going to sound like this is a rah-rah thing for B1G1. No, it's not. The heroes of the process here are the people down the bottom of the pyramid. So what have we achieved? Well, now 384. That was, by the way, early this morning, Singapore time. It's now crossed the 385 million today. And it is quite a story. And by the way, that's what you are doing with the people you're on boards of and so on and so forth. You're helping them create new stories. We'll talk about the impact of that in just a minute. And you can see it's quite a story, but how is that happening? It's happening. Here come the heroes. The people that are part of the Business for Good network, the Business for Good around the world. And you can see they're in so many industries across 48 countries. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the 480 high impact projects that you can choose. Notice they're all verified. We put them through what for them is hell. It's 18 weeks of audits. We go back over 3 years. All of that kind of stuff, and then we submit. If their numbers pass that, it goes to an independent board. The board, by the way, rejects somewhere between 7 and 9 out of 10 every quarter. And what that means is when you see those projects that you just saw, you know damn well, excuse my French, you know very well that they actually do what they says, and they're all tracked, and you can see as well that fully 100% of your giving goes. And by the way, it's not just a question of you using B1G1. We partner with you. This is the MX team led by this young lady here. This is Bron. And we build together with you a structure and integration and strategy. Now, if this is sounding good, one more important slide to come. But if this is sounding pretty good for you right now, then what you might want to do, I'll turn my my thing off right there. There you go. You might want to click on that QR code, and I'll show you in a minute what you will see when you click on that. So just get ready to click. Maybe anyway, if you want to click it, and follow where it leads you. But let's go a little stage further over here. In fact, this is where it leads you. I want us all of us on this call to click that and to join me in making some impacts just because you're here. And we're going to pay for these. You don't have to pay anything for that. All you have to do is choose which one it is. And by the way, as a B1G1 member, you can do all of this stuff here. So go ahead, select what it's going to be. You're going to provide 50 days of access to life-saving clean water, given that there are 730 million people in the world who don't have that. What one are you going to choose? Just go ahead and choose it. And once you've chosen it, then what's going to happen is you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and you can find out some more stuff if you want about B1G1, but go ahead and choose that impact. So let me give you though, and thank you for spending so much time with me. Here's the very, very best reason for every single one of us to do everything, not just this, but to do everything that you've heard thus far in this lovely event. And it's got to do with that why again. Why do you do what you do? And I want you to have a look at this guy. See, it's about what you leave behind. This is Steve Jobs. In 1996 at Pixar, he said this: "The storyteller is the most powerful person in the world." And then he continued, "The storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for an entire generation yet to come." Now, lots of words there, but let's have a look at the last 7. For an entire generation yet to come. When you really get those last 7 words, you realize something very important. And what you realize is it's about something much bigger than you. And that's one of the reasons why being in this community is so important. And of course, what that leads to, Callum was talking about foundations and stuff. What that leads to is legacy. The stuff we leave behind. Sadly, most of us think about it way too late. And when we do think about it, we think about leaving a legacy as if we have some sort of choice. We don't. The only choice we have is that whether it's one of consumption or contribution. But you'll notice that I'm a fan of stringing words together in a particular way. It's called alliteration. Remember, standard to stand out because you stand for. We can do the same thing with legacy. Instead of saying, let's wait around until we leave a legacy, why don't we say, let's live it? Let's live it every single day. And B1G1 helps you do that because all of those little projects for just literally cents, you can make a huge difference in the world. I know that sounds weird, but you really can. And not just living it, but leveraging it, encouraging the people, the boards, all of those sorts of people, the people in your network to be doing the same thing as you. And why would we be doing that? Not for ourselves, but for an entire generation yet to come. And to put that perhaps a little too close to the bone, let's have a look at what that means. It means it's not for you. It's for your children and your children's children. And of course, if you look at that, then it's kind of like, whoa, what a journey that would be. Well, it certainly, we could say it that way, but now for the thousands of people and businesses that are part of, and Callum is one of them, that part of this amazing thing called B1G1, then it's not what a journey that would be, it's what a journey that is. And again, if you haven't yet clicked on that little QR code, go ahead and do that. And thank you so much for being a part of this. And by the way, final observation. Yes, in B1G1, you start with these tiny little things. So it's all about the power of small. But when enough of us do it in these times, remember those exponential curves that you saw right at the beginning. And what happens is the power of small becomes the power of all. And that's why I'm so looking forward to following up on this with you. Thank you, Callum, for having me. I hope that made sense.
That was awesome as always, Paul. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, great. I just planted a tree. How cool is that?
Oh, good. Well
Brilliant.
done, you. Well done, you. Yeah.
Really, really good. Cool. We're gonna have to keep this quick. I realize we've sort of overrun a little bit, but I really want to give people a chance to ask some questions for you. And I think actually I want to start with Benjamin, because I know you had other plans today, and I sort of begged and pleaded you to stay on and watch Paul's presentation. Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts with what you've learned over the year and what you thought about Paul's presentation there.
In fact, I'm going to have to rewatch it because there are hidden aspects, Paul, that I had blind spots really, and Callum already told me. So standing out and speaking to a mission and creating something bigger. This is a perfect snowball idea that can be bolted on top of what I've learned from Guild. But honestly, I have to go back and rewatch it because it's a new idea and my brain needs to kind of deconstruct it before it can absorb it.
You got it.
So let me
Thank you.
go to you, Paul, because you've been talking about this for a long time. You've met a lot of businesses. You've seen the transformation that businesses go through, and it's as much it's the founder. It's that kind of brain switch that Benjamin's going through now. What are the sort of implications that you've seen when companies shift? I mean, you gave us an amazing example from the company in New York, but you've seen this with hundreds of companies, thousands of companies over the years. What is that shift, and how does it impact their clients, their staff, their investors? What's your sort of feedback on that?
Oh, well, I could run through 9 sets of numbers that we track, but essentially particularly in relation to culture, it makes a massive difference in the culture and the engagement. It makes a massive difference in productivity, on value. Once you exit the company, people will value your company more because you're doing this stuff. And it's I think now, you know, there's been so much, people have been trying to make it in a way so hard that we've got things like, you know, ESGs and all of those sorts of things kind of slowing things down. By the way, I think that ESG should be very simple. It should just stand for embed social good. That's what it should stand for. And then we wouldn't need to measure all of these things that don't seem to lead anywhere. So we are seeing very, very, very significant changes in the way in which companies are operating. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, remember that point I made about fostering humanity flourishing. Like, one of the things that's so interesting about AI is we can use it to do exactly that, to actually be more human, not less so. And that more human is just so great for the connections and all the other things that we need to build to do the sorts of things that you've been talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, so I'll come to you in a second, but just what I'm very, very conscious of is, in a world that's changing very fast, there's certain things that are going to stay the same, things like relationships and your positioning. And I think that clarity around who you're serving and the mission beyond the doing of the business, regardless of what happens with AI, that becomes an incredibly powerful magnet that attracts people.
And one big surprise, you know, one of the things that you're really good at, and I'm sure Benjamin is, and many other people are as well, is numbers, you know. And so, you know, we have the quarterly targets and all of those sorts of things that we measure. What we're seeing as business owners, right? What we're seeing now is a really significant change where people are not just, sure, they're measuring the financials, but what they're actually measuring and having targets on are those giving targets that we kind of looked at before. And what they, of course, are saying is, by the way, when the salespeople or when the customer experience people can see that ticking over, that as a result of this, it wasn't that we did, you know, a couple of $1 million extra this month. It was that so many more people got fed, so many more people did this, and so on. And that just changes the dynamic of the company very, very, very significantly.
Yeah, very cool. Benjamin, you wanted to say something?
I wanted to add two thoughts, because the first thought I had listening to you, Paul, is, the generosity or the charitable aspect is something I realized I needed to implement into my own activities. And I became an ambassador to an organization that raises awareness of mental health. So I spend, a limited amount of my time doing pro bono free work, helping something greater. It only gives me goodness, but it also shows my network. This is a person that positions themselves as having abundance of time, having abundance of value. And then,
100%.
People like to be around the same type of people. And here I want to segue into what I've been talking about, building investor relationships. The new generation of inheritors who will inherit enormous amounts of wealth, they are about impact investing, social climate, social businesses. So if you position yourself as a thought leader of, I make money in my company and part of the proceeds we invest into sustainability, affordable housing, you have a much easier way to connect with investors who are very secluded, but you have this overlap, this human overlap.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a sharing human values in a very different way. And yeah, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
Gents, I could happily talk for the rest of the evening with both of you. Very conscious of
likewise.
We've already gone over. Thank you so much for your time. Whether intentionally or accidentally, you've tied all of my threads together much better than I could ever have done. So thank you very, very much for doing that. And reach out to those two on LinkedIn if you would like to be a part of that. Yeah, I am very conscious of your time, so we will just wrap this up. But thank you, Paquita, for your comments. I hope you have all got lots of value from today. really the whole day has been about how you go from being an outsider to an insider. And I have been lucky enough to be an insider with people like Paul Dunn, people like all the speakers today. And when you get into those inner circles with those people, it's just inspiring and energizing. And hopefully that has shared some of that with you. I hope you got some great value from it. We're going to send you a ton of freebies and other bits and pieces. If you would like to join our one-day event, and I would love to have you at our one-day event, then click on the link and we'll send you that. You've got 24 hours to do that. As I said, we'll throw in the $3,500 Get Launched program because I'd love to help you build networks as well. And thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to all of our guests and the engagement in the chat. It's been fantastic. Any questions, chuck them into that LinkedIn post and I will try and answer them later. But thank you all very, very much. And I hope to see you in a circle. Thank you.